All right, let's try this out. All right, hopefully my internet holds up, but get folks in here so we can go ahead and get the spiel going. What do we have here? Fontes Marify. So Nanny Winnie, and as you guys filter in, going to be asking the obvious question. As you can see, the video is going to be titled, will armed security in schools, will that be effective? Because let's face it, the outcry from the left about banning guns, limiting guns, that's not going to happen. That is just not going to happen. So we are going to have to take this from a realistic point of view. America is a country that is leaning right. It is a country that is center right. We are a right-wing oriented country. I understand the cry about the liberals and liberal policies and all of that. But at the end of the day, this country it leans right and it's heading in a right-wing direction. So the question I'm asking is, do you believe that armed security will have an effect on this? And the reason I'm asking that is because we now have two incidents where you've had mass casualty events where there were armed personnel there and they were hesitant to enter the dwelling. This incident in Texas, as more is coming out, it looks like that there were cops on scene and they were hesitant to go in there and help students. No, it will not. There was armed security at the schools. Exactly. Black Myth. And I love the name, by the way. Yep. That's where we're heading. Fontes Marify. We had resource officers in my school by real officers, not one shooting. Okay. All right. Fair enough. But that's not what's going on. What happened here down in Uvalde, Texas. And also Parkland, Florida. There was an armed police officer in Parkland, Florida, who once again took cover while he heard the shots being fired inside. So we're asking the question, do you believe armed security in schools will have an effect on this? I'm taking it in that direction because even as a liberal, I am willing to admit that the idea of limiting firearms, limiting the Second Amendment in any way, fashion, or form is a failed mission. It is a no-go. It does not matter how many of these take place, how many children are killed. At the end of the day, the Second Amendment shall not be infringed upon. The Second Amendment is more important than anything favoring trying to limit this. Folks are willing to try other ways, other avenues, but limiting the Second Amendment will not happen, will not stand. So to some degree, it is not necessarily even worth discussing anymore. Mass casualty events. I'm trying to not say the shooting word. I don't want to trigger the censor. So I'll say mass casualty events here are insane. No place else in the world operates like this. Marley Marl, I agree with you 100%. There is no other country on earth that has the mass casualty events of the United States. There clearly is something different about the United States as opposed to other countries. We can't admit that. We can't address that, but it clearly is in existence. Humans aren't going to run towards gunfire. No one wants to get shot or die. Boxer robot. That comment is what I refer to as a home run. But there are a lot of folks, particularly Second Amendment proponents, that this is the solution. When you have problems with guns, you add more good guns, and that is the equation that they operate under. That is the equation that they believe will work. So even though you're suggesting that folks will be hesitant to run towards gunfire, this is the solution being offered. Now, folks are talking about mental health and things like that as well. But the typical solution in this country to gun problems is to add more good guns to the mix. So the notion that folks are afraid to run towards gunfire will have to somehow be negotiated in their lab. Okay. Oh my God. I don't know what's going on. Hang on a second. Let me try to switch over to my back and forth. Shit. The internet does not like me in this location. Sorry about that. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you start limiting ammunition, the governors are going to pass laws to include ammunition in the Second Amendment. I don't think there's any way around this in regards to touching the Second Amendment. So I would not even advise that. If cops won't run towards the sound of gunfire, yeah, and they're making it clear they're not going to be quick to do that. So what do? If you want to add more firearms to these scenes and the cops are making it clear they're not going to run toward it, better. Butternut, let's bring her on. Yes, security in the schools is important. Yeah, but who's going to do it? As someone said, no one wants to get shot. Better Butternut, good evening. Good evening to
Hi,
you.
how are
Welcome to the
you?
program. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, I'm listening to I was actually just listening to the news conference that was given on this last, shooting incident. And I'm thinking to myself, they're not saying anything. They're not answering any of the questions about what solutions could happen. They don't care about that. They only care about winning the next election so that they can take over, the Senate and the House, and so they're not going to say anything constructive about it at this time because November is too close and they don't want to lose their base. So,
Well, let me respond, and I hear you. And I'm going to let you continue, but I will say in regards to someone in the comment, Iron Worker Blood stated that the liberals love when people die because of mass casualty events. That is a horribly cruel thing to say. You really believe that folks are looking at 19 children being slaughtered and looking at this in gleeful? I mean, okay, go ahead, better, but I don't even know what to say with that. But go
yeah,
ahead.
that was very sick. I mean, no,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the there's no quick answer to this because this is years and years of compounded craziness and gun laws being left to the states basically to decide what their particular gun laws would be. So it's not going to work unless it's a federally mandated thing across the board. But the problem with that is it takes 2/3 of a majority in both the House and the Senate to pass anything in
Yeah.
that manner. And then on top of that, you've got people saying that that would disregard parts of the Second Amendment, which on one hand maybe, but on the other hand maybe not. I mean, it's supposed in the Second Amendment it says a well-regulated militia. Well-regulated means that there are some regulations that need to be put in place. The Constitution is a fluid document, so if the Constitution is a fluid document, that means that you can put in well-regulated, you know, well regulate the issue of guns. And there's another point to that. When that well regulated was put in there, a gun was a musket that took on average 5 to 15 minutes to load depending on how much powder you packed into it.
Yeah. That
I
is true.
mean,
Let me
they weren't
just
talking about an AR-15 that can hold 100 rounds.
yeah, that is true. Let me respond to one of the other funny guy 7133 saying two liberals. Let me make it clear to you. The free speech is paramount here. I generally talk to MAGA. This is a MAGA friendly audience. I make it
Hmm.
clear, but everybody gets a chance to speak. I'm sorry if the woman speaking does not represent your political affiliation. She has a right to speak. If you want to come on, anyone wants to come on, you send the invite and you are allowed here and you are allowed to give your speak no matter if I agree with it or not. That's not the issue. You get to
Right.
state your point. The woman gets to speak. If you want to come on, you do the same. Better, better. Go ahead.
I have with all of the compound issues that we've been dealing with recently, from Roe versus Wade, people don't see that when that gets overturned, that's going to cause a lot of different things to be overturned in its wake. I mean,
Yeah.
and it could be that your privacy laws that happen to be there, if by chance we get a 2/3 majority with the Democrats in any of them in the House or the Senate, then the well regulated militia thing will happen because you're taking away privacy laws, and privacy laws is the basis of the 14th Amendment and in that word liberty. I mean, he put it in that memo, or actually it was like a briefing from he put it in there that it's
Yeah.
based on privacy, it's based on liberty. Well, think about it. The Constitution is it has that liberty word, and the 14th Amendment is based on the liberty word, and the liberty word is based on privacy.
Let, let
Privacy
me
laws
let
continue
me
to be
ask
the
you this.
problem.
Okay, let me ask you this, ma'am. I have someone that has the opposing opinion to yours. I think me and your opinions are probably closer in line as opposed to being opposing, but I do have someone. I will make sure they keep it respectful. Do you mind me bringing on someone
No,
else?
bring someone else in. I'm fine with
Okay.
that.
All right, fair enough. Okay, I will
I
bring.
respect everyone's opinion and viewpoints. We just
Well,
need to work together to
this is
come up
a,
with a solution.
yeah, this is a regular viewer of the show, so he's been on here many times. This is Harris Jordan. Harris, can you
Oh,
hear me?
yes, I can, and I'll keep it calm tonight.
That is a good thing.
So, in regards to muskets, we had people that were called Minutemen back then. They were the fastest loaders of muskets. They could load a musket within under a minute. Usually, it was between 30 to 45 seconds they could load a
Yes,
musket.
I have heard of the Minutemen.
Okay. Um, so they also had what was called a puckle gun. It was a gun that was belt fed, and it had a hand crank on it, and it was an automatic weapon. So when they turned that hand crank, it turned that flat cylindrical uh,
Okay,
cartridge on
what's your point
top.
on this, Harris? What's your point on this?
So to say that they only had muskets and that was the only thing that they knew when they wrote the Second Amendment is false. And a well-regulated militia necessary to a free state and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It is not only for a well regulated militia. A well regulated militia does not mean the weapons are well regulated. It means the militia themselves are in order with chain of command, well regulated. It has
What do
nothing
you
to
have to
do
say
with
to
the
that?
firearms themselves.
What do you have to say to that?
It
Better
wasn't
brother.
considered well regulated but the militia was supposed to be the people who had the guns. And the
Correct.
people back then, who they were calling the people, were white men who owned land.
Let me interject because I heard her mention well regulated. Harris, what is your definition? Because that's a statement that can obviously be interpreted a whole host of ways. But as a Second Amendment right leaning individual, what do you think the definition of well regulated militia even means?
A well regulated militia was explicitly put in there because each state had their own militia. Okay? The North Carolina militia, South Carolina militia, the New York militia, the Pennsylvania militia, they all had their own militia. And at the time, before the Constitution was written, the militias that they had were not the greatest in a sense of order and control, right? So, like when they were on the battlefield, the militias tended to fall apart and they tended to kind of do their own thing. So when they specifically said a well regulated militia, it just means that they wanted their soldiers to be in tight order. They wanted their people, their commanders, to be in control of a tight group, right? Because
So
we
this,
had the
so it
continent,
really
we had the
doesn't. So
we
it
had the
really doesn't have a lot of meaning of value to me. Sounding like what you're saying, there's not a lot of value to that really at all. Just a tight group of guys.
no. Here's the thing: a well-regulated militia turned into the National Guard because
Okay,
each state has a National Guard, right? So the federal
right.
government took over a well-regulated militia in each state and gave each state the right to have a National Guard. Okay, we still have state militias aside from the National Guard. My state, Arizona, actually has the Arizona militia, aside completely separate from the military.
Okay, right.
Most states have them. So if people want to bring up this whole, oh well, they only had muskets back then during the Second Amendment. Okay, well they only had feather quills and a different kind of paper. So that means that your First
And
Amendment
only
speech
white men who owned
and
land could vote.
that means that your First Amendment rights do not apply to this cell phone, to this social media app, to any social media app. It means that you cannot go on the computer and have First Amendment rights.
Okay, let her rebut. Let her respond. Okay, better.
Okay, That's why in that statement that I said before, I said that it is a fluid document. It has been changed since that time. So
Shall
going
So
by
wait, wait,
just
wait. How? When did that happen? I'm not aware of that. You're saying the Second Amendment has been changed since that time?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
I'm saying that the Constitution is a fluid document and it has been changed since that time. The Second
true, true.
Amendment is an amendment that was to that document and was
Yeah.
put into place because they were fighting against they were fighting tyranny from another country trying to come
Okay.
in, and we were trying to form a country at that time. So a
it was not a
well-regulated
foreign
militia,
country. It was
a
the
well,
colonies of it was the British colonies. It was not a foreign country.
Okay. Let her
Let's be
finish. I'm
factual.
gonna give you a chance, Scott. I mean,
Right, no, I'm being
Harris. I'm
respectful.
gonna
I'm
give
just
you.
saying
I'm gonna
let's
you,
be
but
factual about it because it was the British colonies. It was not a
okay.
it
nation
Well,
was
state.
Britain that we were fighting against, which was a on a different. I mean, it's not the same. God.
They claimed the
that is your
colonies
okay.
as their
Okay.
The
own.
Who
British
they
That is
were?
people
not
came
Wait a
a
minute,
here
folks.
foreign
and
country.
colonized.
Okay,
You're
wait.
right.
Who
But
they were
other people
fighting against
colonized
is
too.
it's who they were fighting against is irrelevant. That's not even.
Right.
We're talking about will armed schools work in America, not who we were fighting back in the
Well, we
1700s.
were
It's
trying to
irrelevant.
become America. That's what I'm trying to say. So
Okay.
when we
Okay.
became
So
America, we were fighting a foreign country, which was
okay. So
Britain.
so then
Okay. And if
I
we
would
had a
respect.
well-regulated militia on that term at that time, they were trying to create an army to fight the British. And that's where the well-regulated militia term came from, was that they were trying
Okay.
to form our own armies to fight the British.
Well, let me ask you this, Better Button. So you agree, Better Button, that the National Guard now is essentially a derivative of what the well-regulated militia has become.
I would say that that's probably accurate.
Okay, and that's all I was looking for is what that meant. Okay,
Okay.
so we're talking
So
about.
then
Go
if we
ahead.
can change the Second Amendment, then where do we stop at every other amendment? Because the
Well,
Second
they're
Amendment
trying to change the
explicitly
14th
says
Amendment.
shall
I
not.
mean,
Nobody is trying to change the 14th Amendment. Who is trying to change the 14th Amendment?
Well, let me answer that question,
No, no,
Harris.
no, 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 no.
Stop.
I want an honest answer. Who is trying to change the 14th Amendment?
I'm trying to give it to you. I'm
yeah,
trying. I'm gonna answer
No,
her.
she made the claim. Now I want
Harris.
her response.
Harris. Harris. It's my show at the end of the day. Let me answer the question, and then you can say whatever. I'm gonna let you say whatever you want, but let me answer the question. Stop and frisk is a clear alteration to the Fourth Amendment. Unwarranted search and seizure. The
Okay, but
Patriot
what
Act.
amendment was that?
The Fourth Amendment. The
he just said
fourth.
the Fourth
No,
Amendment.
no, no, no. What amendment was stop and frisk?
The fourth. Fourth.
No.
The
It was
Fourth
never an
Amendment.
amendment. Stop and frisk was a local law. It was never an amendment. Be truthful. Be accurate.
Stop and frisk was a law that basically disobeyed the Fourth
The
Amendment.
Fourth
Getting rid
Amendment.
of
Okay,
Roe
Exactly.
versus
okay,
Wade
okay.
will be an attack
So
on the
you're at
14th
okay. So
Amendment.
you're
That's what we're
completely
talking about.
conflating two different things. You are trying to compare a local city ordinance with a federal amendment to the Constitution. A local law violated an amendment to the Constitution. That does not mean that stop and frisk was an amendment. That is what you tried to
That
say, and I corrected
okay.
you.
Let me rephrase it. Let me rephrase it so I can make sure you understand. When Chicago banned guns in that city, they didn't do it nationwide. Chicago banned guns in that city. They created a law that went against the Second Amendment. When New York and
Absolutely.
hang on, let me finish. When Rudolph Giuliani decided to impose stop and frisk on the citizens of New York, he created a law that went against the Fourth Amendment. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay. And we have agreed on that part, right? Because it was a local law that was put in place, and then the federal government, the Supreme Court, the judicial branch said you cannot do that. That is completely different from the Constitution saying you cannot infringe on this right. That is completely different.
Okay. So as long as local cities infringe on the Second Amendment, then it's okay.
No, I no. I just said shall not be infringed. I
If
think
they're
that gun
going to
control
throw,
laws, even local laws, are infringing on the Second Amendment. I've explained this numerous times before.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna let you guys speak, but I got to move the program on. I've given you guys both time. I
go
got to
go
move the
go ahead. We can move the program on.
All
I'm
right.
I'm done.
And real quick, just the fact that you say, "Oh, well, that was only written when white men were in control." Okay, so what? The 13th Amendment fixed that, right?
I don't know the point she was making. I've dropped her. I don't know the point she was making. I'm just simply asking. The reason I brought up stop and frisk is because you said if we infringe on the Second Amendment, then what else are they going to do? And I was pointing out to you that they've already infringed on other amendments already. You
Well, that's
mentioned it
that's
was
my
only a
point.
local city. You mentioned it's only a local city, but what I'm trying to point out to you is that other amendments have already been infringed on.
Right, and that's my point because this is the thing that I really want Democrats to understand is if you let them take an inch, then when you least expect it, somebody else is going to try to take a mile. And that
Does
is the
that only
problem.
okay? Here's what I let me take your exact statement. Democrats need to understand if you let them take an inch, they'll take a mile. Where were you when George Bush was passing the Patriot Act that took more than a mile?
I
Where
was
were you on
100%
stop? Where
against
were
it,
you?
and I
Hang
was
on.
speaking out against it. I was
If
speaking out
there
against it.
wasn't a Harris, there was not enough of you. Where were you guys when it came to stop and frisk? That's once again it's taking an inch. You said
You know where we
liberals.
were? We were being shouted down by Democrats. That's
You
where we were.
okay, we're shouting you down on gun rights and you're still fighting back on that. Why didn't you fight back on the Patriot Act?
I did. I still do.
Not talking about you
I absolutely
specifically.
think we should
Not talking
rescind the
about you.
Patriot Act.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I gotta move it on, man. I appreciate you coming through.
I mean, this is a very easy concept to understand, right? If you let the government take away one little, what you call one little
I
aspect
get it.
of the Constitution, you are giving them a power to take away everything.
Okay. All right. I gotta move on. I gotta move on.
And he's I agree with him on the notion that if you let government in your business, they don't know when to fucking stop. I'm with Harris on that. I'm just pointing out from his comment that the liberals need to understand that when the Republicans are the ones that have passed some of the most invasive legislation in history. Trump himself, President Trump himself. In fact, I don't want to hold up this hat. I want to hold up this hat because Trump himself said George Bush made some of the most ignorant mistakes in history, and that came from the right. That is not a liberal thing. How many Republicans supported the Patriot Act? How many Republicans support stop and frisk? So the idea that liberals do not understand when amendments are infringed upon and the Republicans do not, and I can point out all type of legislation, infringible legislation that Republicans have passed. Listen, I understand if you are a strong, staunch Second Amendment supporter, you value the Second Amendment over the other amendments. But make no mistake about it, other amendments have already been infringed upon. Hell, freedom of speech is one that they attack constantly. So I don't know where he's coming from. And Cyboth, yeah, the answer is yes in regards to joining. Cyboth 3173, you know what to do. Come on in. One Chevy 77. We're gonna put you on here.
Yeah, I don't. Him pointing out that the liberals need to understand as if the Republicans have not been deeply involved in cutting amendments didn't make a lot of sense to me. One Chevy 77. Good afternoon or good evening.
Good evening, brother. How's everything going this evening?
It's going good. I'm getting hammered. They coming at me hard already, man.
I can't lie. When I pushed that button, I was going ahead and put my boxing gloves on to come on in here.
So what's going? Let me make it clear because when you start talking about guns, I have a lot of very civil debates in here. Obviously, I'm a liberal. Obviously, I prefer talking to MAGA, and most nights it is very cordial, very civil. But the minute you start talking about anything in regards to the Second Amendment, the idiots come out. The amount of insults, personal attacks that are scrolling by this page are insane. The female guests, folks were commenting on her facial features and all. The Second Amendment truly removes all of the morality in people. My take on this is, and I'm gonna let you get your point across, but my take on this is because America is a center right leaning country, even though I might have viewpoints on the Second Amendment, I'm under the guise that we need to focus on something else because it doesn't matter how many of these things happen. No one, as when they say shall not be infringed, they mean that. So you could have a mass shooting every day. They're not going to take any kind of infringement on the Second Amendment. So as far as I'm concerned, even as a liberal, I would suggest that we right for the meanwhile get used to mass shootings. This is going to happen. Now we can work on mental health, putting security guards in schools and things like that. But every right winger I've had on the program that pointed out things that are going on and need to be fixed, I asked them the same question over and over again. While these things are still broken, whether it's mental health, schools with not enough extra guns in them, or should you still continue handing out guns to the citizens while you know this stuff is broken? And in every single case, the answer was yes. Still allow people to get guns. So it shall not be infringed upon. As far as this liberal is concerned, is solid. 1-7 or Chevy, go ahead.
All right, brother. Look, I wanted to come on a while ago and ask her, not to demean her or put her down or anything. Ask her sincerely, has she ever read the Federalist Papers? The Federalist
I
Papers.
have not.
per-
I have not. Tell me
I,
where
I
you're going with
highly
that.
I highly suggest you read the Federalist Papers, because back when the Constitution was written, everybody thinks it was all hunky dory. Everybody come in agreeing on everything. No, it was a big fight over the Constitution. And the
Okay.
Federalist Papers were about the amendments, and it goes into detail about, like with the Second Amendment, about it being the people to keep and bear arms. And in the Federalist Papers, they pretty much spell out that the people need the same arms that the government has, just in case it ever goes that route.
But like he was saying, back in those days, you were dealing with muskets and things like that. Right now, the government
Brother,
has
let me
hang
stop you
on.
right there for just a second.
Okay,
If
go ahead.
as brilliant as these men were they were the brains of their day. Okay. Do you honestly 100% believe that they didn't see advancements in technology coming?
I'm sure they did.
So if they seen advancements in technology coming, they knew the government would advance in weaponry. They believed that the people should
So
advance in weaponry.
let let's go with what you're saying. Let's go with what you're saying as 100% accurate, where the founding fathers knew technology would advance, and the founding fathers wanted the citizens to have the same weapons for to be able to fight against tyranny. Based on that description, then a citizen should be allowed to have an atomic weapon. That is a weapon that the government has. They should be allowed to have
I
anthrax
agree.
and
I
rifles.
agree that that is a weapon the government has. I don't agree with the atomic weapon. Period.
Why not?
Because that kills indiscriminately.
That's what the government has. Some would argue that some of the handguns folks have can kill indiscriminately. I'm just simply saying, if you want to be able to fight tyranny, you need to have the same weapons as the government. You're not going to fight off the United States government with an AR-15 and a 100-round drum. That's not enough firepower. You should
No, it
have the
is.
ability
It's
to
not
have.
enough firepower. It truly is not. But as someone like we've talked the other night that works with veterans, that is a fire department veteran myself, I work with veterans that's been over in the sandbox and stuff. There's not very many military that would go along with attacking people on this soil.
Okay. What does that mean?
So that means that the army that the government has, they're not going to have if they turn that army against the United States people.
Well, and see, I've brought this up before in previous broadcasts that we use the Second Amendment kind of like an insurance policy. As long as we have the largest freestanding army, we are protected against foreign invasions. As long as we have the largest freestanding army, we are somewhat protected against tyranny to some degree. That's an insurance policy that the Second Amendment provides us. However, I have to ask the same question I always ask. What are the premiums for that insurance policy? If you get insurance policy on your car, you pay premiums every month. What are the premiums? The premiums is all of the deaths in this country from citizens killing other citizens. The premiums are mass casualty events, cops that are afraid to roam some streets. Those are the premiums you pay to maintain that insurance policy. So at the end of the day, just like if you purchase car insurance, you'd have to ask yourself, if I bought a $30,000 car and the insurance premiums are $7,000 a month, are the premiums worth this level of insurance? Now, I understand if you're a Second Amendment supporter, you think the answer is yes. But make no mistake about it, as a condition to have the Second Amendment in this country, we are paying some very, very high premiums. The amount of firearms that kill other citizens, not outsiders, but actual other walking citizens in this country, is super duper high. Is it rivaled by any other nation on earth?
No, it is not. But this is where I think the argument gets real heated with the Second Amendment. Is the first thing they go, just like some of the people in the comments, the first thing they go for is let's ban the assault weapons. Let's ban the assault weapons without actually knowing the statistics on everything.
Yeah, I agree with
Hands
that.
and feet
Handguns
kill more
cause, yeah.
people than, well, no, just hands and feet, not handguns. Hands and feet kill more people than assault rifles every year. People killing people with their bare hands kill more people than assault rifles every year. Handguns kill more people than with assault rifles every year. But that's the
Okay.
first thing they go after.
Well, I cannot speak to the logic from that aspect, but I've made it clear from the liberal side of in me, and somebody in the comments said, do not just bow to someone else's opinion. But in my opinion, the country leans center right, and no matter how liberal I may feel, I believe at least in 2022, fighting against any type of Second Amendment, fighting in favor rather of any type of Second Amendment limitations, and I mean anything. Even I talked about earlier on the program that in this country, even a blind man can purchase a firearm, and there were folks who attacked me for that and said that okay, so a blind man cannot defend his house now. I mean, so I am totally aware that when it comes to limiting the Second Amendment, when folks say shall not be infringed, they mean shall not be infringed. So we got to, from the liberal standpoint, if I'm talking to other liberals, I would strongly tell other liberals, you need to find another way in the House. You're not getting in this way. I mean, I don't care how many mass casualty events that we have in this country. When they say shall not be infringed, they mean we're willing to sustain as many mass casualty events, as many loss of children that come our way to maintain the Second Amendment rights. As long as you go somewhere else, they're willing to entertain the conversation. But when you're talking about going after the Second Amendment, dead kids is not going to change their mind. That's just my take on it. But go ahead.
All right, I have to respond to somebody in your comments. Mac 10 was talking about banning several things and alcohol being one of them. Leave my damn whiskey alone.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, but
Hey,
I
brother, I'll
don't
get
think
off
you're
here.
okay. Hey, well, come on
I'll
back
get
to
off here and
anytime, man.
let you go ahead. But hey, do me a favor. Read the Federalist Papers. You will
I
find
will.
it tremendously interesting.
Somebody claimed that was right wing stuff, but I will look it up and read it because you're not the first to bring it to me. So I appreciate that.
All right, brother. Have a good
All
one.
right, you have a good evening.
Read a couple more comments. I do see you in there. Sinister One. Lyle, I see you in there, but Sinister One is someone who tried to get in early. I'm gonna put him on for a brief moment before you. But let me read a few things first. We tried prohibition, black market will explode. Well, I would tell you this. Anytime you pass a law to make something illegal that was currently legal, you will create a black market and you will cause problems. This is what folks use in regards to the Second Amendment. If you ban guns, folks are still going to get guns on the black market. For some reason, that does not resonate with rolling back Roe versus Wade, and it should, because if you ban abortions, you're going to create a black market for that as well, and folks are going to do it. You see what happens on the black market. What he mentioned, prohibition. We talk about drugs. It simply creates felons where there did not used to be felons. All of these things, the prohibition, rolling back Roe versus Wade, the drug war, and if you were to ban guns, you are suddenly creating felons out of people who normally used to be regular citizens. And for some reason, you guys think that's going to work with Roe versus Wade, but yeah, you're going to create a lot of female felons. And my guess is just like with the war on drugs and the prohibition, within a generation or two, you're going to roll that one back under the guise that it was a failure as well. Bringing on a sinister one, and I do see you.
Said, we tried to talk to this gentleman. He's kind of new to the program. I don't think we ever talked before. Oh yeah, we did talk once before Sinister. Did we not?
Yeah, last night we did, but for some
Yeah,
reason everything started getting glitchy at the end of your live there, and people are
yeah,
getting kicked out.
yeah. And I'll apologize in advance for some reason. Well, I'm underground. That's one thing. But the second thing is, yeah. What is it? I had T-Mobile, and for some reason, after a certain amount of data per month, they play games with me. They shall infringe on your data rights, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, I
What's on
got
your
them
mind?
too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. What's going on with you?
Not much. I just figured I'd hop in here again, and I can't remember what we were all talking about. I figured it was going to take a while.
Well, let me run it by you. The question of this topic is, do you believe armed security in schools will work? And the reason I ask that, because everybody on the right, all of the Second Amendment proponents, is promoting, well, you need to have guards in every school. Well, as the details from this last casualty event in Texas a couple of days ago is coming out, just like with Parkland, Florida, a few years back, they did have armed personnel there, and the folks with the guns were afraid to go in. They were hesitant to go in. So when folks suggest that you have armed personnel at schools, stuff like this makes me ask the question: how do you know that that armed guard, that armed cop or off-duty cop that's moonlighting, how do you know they're going to answer the call of duty when they hear high-capacity rounds being fired in rapid succession and they only have a 9mm on their hip? How do you know they're going to respond to that?
Well, and I believe there was 2 armed guards in Texas at this school. The problem is you would have to have enough to cover every entrance. And usually they'll have 1 or 2 SO officers, if they have them, on duty, which they can't be over a whole campus at the same time to protect everyone. So, I think personally every door should be locked from the outside on a school. No one should be able to get in any door. I know with fire laws and that they have to have them unlocked, but you can have them unlocked from the inside.
Yeah, they could do that. But
Um,
here's, I guess the issue is this, and this is what you're hearing from the left. The reason why, okay, the right obviously does not want you to touch the Second Amendment. The left is not a big fan of putting armed guards in every school because of the optics. But here's the question: is are we going to is this the new way? Is this we just start militarizing and putting armed personnel in all public places? Is that where this is headed?
well, I think if one thing you could do is quit making it a gun-free zone, because that just giving people targets. Because a shooter isn't going to want to go somewhere where someone could shoot back. They're going to go where there's no one
I,
that's
I,
going to
I
oppose them.
Okay, I got to disagree with that with numerous examples. The Buffalo, New York shooter that went to the supermarket, that wasn't a gun-free zone. The El Paso Walmart shooter, El Paso, Texas, he went in
Well, I
Walmart and
didn't
shot up
say all, but the
okay.
majority are gun-free zones
I don't
of
even
these
know.
mass shooting
I
events.
honestly don't even know if that's true. I mean, there's a lot of mass shootings, mass casualty events that have taken place in zones where you could have a gun. I mean, if we want to take your example, then do we start allowing firearms in courtrooms and firearms on airplanes? I mean, do we just get rid of all gun-free zones and just let folks roam around armed? Is that what you're
Well, on the
suggesting?
airplanes, everyone's checked before they get on by security metal detectors, so there's no reason to have it there because everybody's supposed to be gun-free. Because you had a security checkpoint you had to go through. Most malls around my area are gun-free zones. They have signs on
Okay.
everything, you're not allowed. I'm a conceal and carry permit holder. You know,
Okay.
it doesn't mean I can't carry in there, but if I'm asked to leave because someone sees it, then I have to leave. But to the average person that doesn't know that law, they see the sign, they think it's a gun-free zone. They
Okay.
could.
Well, here's the issue I would have because when I mentioned the El Paso Walmart, even if you go and commit a mass casualty event or attempt to commit a mass casualty event in an area where people can carry guns in, there's still a lot of citizens that roam around every day without a firearm on them. So
Correct.
you can, Texas is a perfect example. Texas has had shootings in Walmart, shootings in churches. I mean, they've had shootings in places where you can carry a firearm and the person was still able to perpetrate the issue. Because just like with the cops, most citizens, when they hear gunfire, they don't run to it. Even the armed citizens are going to grab their family. Maybe you'll pull your pistol out and be ready to protect your family. But if you're in Walmart and you hear gunfire, you're probably going to get your family and leave the Walmart, leaving everyone else in the Walmart to be shot. You're not going to go running around that Walmart looking for some guy with a long rifle when you got a revolver or a handgun in your hand. Most people are not going to do that.
It depends on who you are.
Most people are not going to do it. I understand there's some heroes out there, but most people are not going to look at their wife and kid and say goodbye and go running off after a guy with an AR with a pistol in their hand. And now some of
Well,
these
I mean, most
assailants
people
are
aren't going to know what they're shooting to begin with when they hear it. I mean, you're either a sheep or you're the sheepdog. So, one of the two. And a lot of people that I know that carry will, one, make sure that their family gets out alive, or like some of us that have served and would rather protect the masses. I don't have wife and kids to protect, so, but there's
if
a lot
you
of
do
kids in
not
them
have
stores that I would want to protect.
well, let me say this. If your ear is not trained enough to even know what they're firing, you probably wouldn't make a good hero. If you need to at least know what's being shot before you go running off looking after the guy. And if
I
you
guarantee
know,
you, I could bring 3 or 4 rounds and fire them, and you could not tell me exactly what those rounds are.
well, okay, fair enough. But I can sure tell you if you're firing a weapon off at a rapid pace where my weapon cannot compete with that. I mean, I have a Glock. I know I can hear, and if I hear someone with
Your
a
Glock
quick
can shoot
trigger on it,
just as fast as an AR-15.
okay,
It's the
I'm not
same
aware of that.
action. It's the same
So what you
action.
so what you're contending is the typical American gun owner would go and pursue an unknown assailant through a Walmart if they were armed. The average
Some,
American with a gun.
some would.
Yeah. I don't even think it's anywhere near half. I don't think it's anywhere near half would do that.
I mean, perfect example was in Texas in the church where the guy started shooting up a church and the neighbor came running out and stopped the shooter, chased him down the road, and ended the shooting. I mean, that's just one
Well, let me
example,
let
but
me
you
ask
don't
this
hear about it because
let
it
me ask
doesn't
this
fit the
question.
narrative.
Okay, you're right about that. I know about that case, so I don't know about saying you wouldn't hear about it. But let me ask this to the folks in the audience.
To the
My
one that
audience is
said he was in the church, that was the other shooting in a church. There was two.
okay. Well,
One the
all right.
people
Well,
were in
well,
the
let me.
church shot at, and one was a neighbor that came out.
Okay, well, let me ask this question. My audience primarily leans right. I make that clear. Most of my audience, at the very least, are concealed or they have some type of access to a firearm. Out of you guys watching, just simply yes or no, if you were in a Walmart with your family and you could hear gunshots and screams coming from the other side of Walmart, would you go and pursue that and look and see if you could solve and save the day? Or would you take your family? You got a clear exit out. You got a clear exit out. You can hear this back in the store. Would you go and pursue that assailant and see if you could solve that issue? Or would you leave with your family? Let me see for those who are armed in the audience. I'm just curious, just doing a impromptu poll. And you see the comments that are coming in. Everybody is getting the fuck out of there. That's what I'm saying.
Not all of them.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think most people would do it. I agree with you though, sir. I do believe some people would do it, but at the end of the day, I do not believe most people would do that.
I mean, I would.
Would your wife be okay? Your spouse or your daughter or son, if they saw you running off like that and knowing that they may be the last time they see you, when all you got to do is just jump in the car and we can go home? How would your family feel about watching you do that?
How would my family feel if 10 more kids died because I did nothing?
I don't know. They might hug you and say, "I'm glad it wasn't you, Dad."
They'd rather have me stop and try to make sure that more people live. It depends on
Okay.
who you're married to.
All
If
right.
you have
Fair
someone who
enough.
only cares about themselves and not public at large, that's why we're in this problem to begin with.
Okay.
And you don't
Well,
have to
I
be a
will say,
Rambo like people are saying in the comments. I mean,
well, I
I'm
will say
trained.
this.
I've taken plenty of classes. I've done a lot of it. I'm going to
And
go
so have the
after.
and so have the cops in Parkland in Texas, where folks in the comments are saying that they've also been trained and they
True.
didn't even do it. And they're sworn officers, and they didn't even do it.
Well, I mean, not all I've seen a cop try to put down a deer on a road and miss the deer 5, 6 times, and I asked you, "Do you want me to shoot him?" Because they
Well,
missed
and
him.
well, if what you're saying is valid, and by the way, folks, give me up to 10,000. Hit the screen. You guys have been really good, but Sinister, I do appreciate your heroicism. If that's the case, if I was in a Walmart and that was happening, I would hope to have you there because I don't believe that the average American would do that. Which is also why I'm not necessarily a big fan, and that's why I asked the question: Would armed, what was the question I asked? Would arms in schools
Yeah.
work? Because I do believe, particularly when it comes to teachers, for all you folks in the audience that are talking about giving guns to teachers, how many teachers, if they had a clear path out of the school, would stay behind and fight and risk their lives for students? I don't believe a lot of them would do it.
Yeah, but
If
how
you
many
can get out, they're going
teachers?
to get out.
How many teachers would lock that door and shield their children in that classroom to protect anyone walking in that door? If they had an opportunity to carry, I guarantee it, everyone that had an opportunity to carry in school would lock that door and be the shield between them kids and anyone that comes in to attack them.
Well, like Endo said in the comments, how many teachers would actually even want to carry? That's a big responsibility. That is a big responsibility to carry a firearm. I mean, a lot of teachers, how many teachers probably are, how many teachers are liberal? You guys talk all the time about
A lot.
liberal colleges and liberal schools. Right. So you want them to be the ones that are carrying a gun, a bunch of liberals. You want to
No,
put your child's life in the hands of a
no,
bunch of liberals.
I don't want to force teachers to carry guns, but I
Okay.
do want,
Right.
if they want to, that they're allowed to protect themselves if they want to. We're
Okay.
taking
Fair enough.
away their right to be able to do that if they feel like they want to. I don't think we need to force teachers because one, I mean, they're not trained. They don't, especially if they don't want to have a gun, they're
It's
not going to
interesting.
try to learn it.
It's interesting you say that because right where you were saying I don't want teachers to be forced, and I'm gonna have to move it on, but I'll give you the last word. Right when you said teachers shouldn't be forced to have a gun, it should be an option. Jeff 412 in the comments said it should be a job requirement. So he's obviously on the opposite side of you. I'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
Oh no, I mean, I think, I like having civil conversations with people, and, I feel like, teachers should be allowed to if they want to, and that if they've gotten training and they want to do that training, they should be allowed to. I think that we should have more security on our door at our schools. We have security guards at banks, we have security guards at malls that are armed, and all these other facilities, but we don't send as much to our high schools, our elementary schools. I mean, this dude didn't even go to school there that did this
Well,
last one.
and like I keep saying, as long as we keep seeing cops cowering on the outside, the notion of having anybody with a gun in school to provide security looks shaky. I mean, because we're seeing sworn officers that are not eager to run into school. So if the officers won't do it, teachers and security guards and all these other lower level security personnel. I mean, what's next? You're going to call Blackwater or put some CIA agents? I mean, what else can you call if you can't depend on the cops?
Call up the
So okay,
vets. Call up
hopefully.
the
All right, well let
vets
me
that
roll
don't
now.
have jobs. They will protect a child's life, man.
That may end up being what happens. We'll see. But I appreciate you coming through, man.
Good talking.
All right.
Real quick, before I go to Lyle, I do got to take a nature break. I will pause this. You'll still be here. Give me about 30 seconds to a minute. There we go. All right. Yeah, we still rolling. All right. Let me see here. Once it cues back up here. Oh, there's comments coming. That guy was full of it. Okay, I see that. Let me bring this back in here. Our country is really transforming. We're leaning right. We're leaning to the right. Let me on here. I do appreciate you guys being on hold. I'm gonna put it at about 5 minutes because there's a lot of folks want to get in. We start talking about firearms, the passion comes out. A lot of folks start calling names. Look, you're allowed free speech in here, but let's stick to the topic. Lyle, what's going on this evening?
What's going on? I'm gonna keep this short. I do think that we should hire some veterans, but I think the risk of you know the PTSD that comes in, the some of them deal with mental health, like and there's another one from the other gentleman that you talked to a few days ago. He was also a vet, and like and he said
Yes,
yeah
yeah, I remember.
yeah, he said he was dealing with some other issues. uh
Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe some cops that have a good track record, oh like a private security guards.
Okay,
uh,
let me interject. And okay, you said private security guards. Here's where the liberal in me comes out. I don't like ever having folks perform civil services when they do it for profit because it just tends to lead to disaster, whether it's profit in healthcare, profit in the penal system. Certain things I'm not a big fan of profitizing. And when it comes to protecting children, when you start having it being done for profit, there's going to be a problem with that. I don't know if the wealthy schools will be able to hire better guards and the poor ones won't or something like that. But when you privatize something, that service will go where the money is. In places where the money is not, those services will be worse. So I'm just going to say, in regards to private services, privatized services, because you said a private security force, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I could be wrong.
like
Continue.
yeah, like it would be funded, by state government, or it could be private, but therefore you don't have to spend money on training. They already would do all those training. All you do is just hire them, and how many you need to be in those school, and they're already on the best shape. They're already trained, and all you have to do is just get a contract with them. It could be either funded by state, uh, or by the whatever local community, but they are private, so you and parents are able to sue them if they don't do their job correctly. And there will be cameras. See how they deal with their job, and they could be undercover in school. You won't even realize. They could be inside or outside. Experts. Because a lot of celebrities do hire private security guards. A lot of presidents, I think, they hire private security guards. A majority of them are well trained.
Well, I'm gonna let you continue, but I just want to. Max Manford too put in the comments. Wow, I can't believe we live in such drastic times. Max, as a liberal, neither can I. And I'm just going to say this, even though I made it clear that I know that the Second Amendment is not going to be moved at all. I speak to a lot of folks from where I used to live at in Australia and things like that. And what you're talking about resonates. They're like, I can't, like the conversation we're having now. And I'm talking with Lyle about putting guards and private folks are overseas are like, you guys are really willing to do all of that around your kids and shit just so you guys can have a gun. I mean, they're looking
Yes.
at us like you guys are fucking crazy. You guys are willing to put undercover all of this just so your kid can go to third grade just so you can. I mean, it does. If you're from America, I get it. We support the Second Amendment. We want to have guns. I get it. But to outsiders looking in, like I mentioned earlier, the insurance versus premium explanation I gave you. Other countries are looking at us and saying, "You guys are sure willing to pay a hell of a lot of high premiums for that insurance." But go ahead, Lyle, because I don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
when
Like
Rick made that comment about we live in such drastic times, I never thought it would get this fucking bad. But go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, here in the United States, I'm pro Second Amendment. I don't gun control is still it's useless. Like we said, we gotta look at other solutions. And like I said, I'm for metal detector. Any time of the week. My high school that I went to had it. We never it saved a lot of life because some random student wants to bring a freaking knife to school, and I'm glad he got caught. uh and then there was one guy, he accidentally forgot his pistol in his backpack, and he also got caught in school. I was like, oh, my bad, I forgot I had a pistol in my backpack. I'm
Man,
like, I don't
wow,
think I think you
wow.
plan to do something, and you should be investigated, buddy. But so just things like that will help. But I do think hiring a veteran, maybe some cops, uh, as long as parents are able to sue the government, then I'm all for it. So whatever, it could be private or public, and then the family, they're able to sue the government for to fail to protect their kids. I'm all for that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Well, let me move it because I got a bunch of folks coming in here, but I,
Sure.
I think we're somewhere in the mix on that.
All right. Y'all have a good
All
day.
right. Have a good one.
Nicole Jessica 23 in the comments wrote, because I said I think a lot of folks probably are looking at us like we're crazy. And she said, I think the opposite. I think they know we're smart because they live in socialism in communist countries. In regards to that comment, let me just say this. The things you can tell when America has some shit right because other countries pattern themselves after us, whether it's the US dollar, our music and entertainment industry, a lot of our sports. They love our celebrities, our Hollywood. You can see the portions of America, our food. A lot of countries pattern themselves after our food. There's McDonald's in every country. Coca-Cola sold everywhere. When we get it right, it's pretty obvious that other countries look at us like you guys are the shit and we want to pattern that. When you look at our gun laws, nobody is patterning themselves after that. They are laughing at us. There is nobody out there saying that we want to be just like America with gun laws. When you look at the first world countries in this world, they have voting rights just like us. If they wanted to have guns like America does, they could vote it in France. They could vote it back in Australia. They could go out and riot and protest, or they could go have a civil war like we're talking about if they ban guns here. They're not doing any of that because they don't think it's a good idea to hand firearms to everybody. So there are areas, like I said, of this country where we got it right, and you can clearly see how the rest of the world treats it. When you look at our Second Amendment, you look at our health care, and you look at our criminal justice system, the rest of the first world is not trying to pattern themselves after that. So that should tell you that those areas we are not doing very well in. They don't want nothing to do with that. And you do not hear their citizens saying, yeah, I want our penal system to be like America. Yeah, America, fuck yeah. They're not saying that. Okay, gun laws should be the same across the United States. That goes kind of against states' rights, but there are a lot of folks who are
Like Cody, Cody, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, you kind of got a loud background, but go ahead with your background's kind of loud, man.
I'm sorry, I'm driving up.
Can you hear me now? Okay, I don't know.
I don't know. Looks like he was coming in and out. CMB Corrado, give me 1 second. Y'all want states to decide everything. Says, let me put it to you this way. You're correct when you say that y'all want states to decide everything. The liberal side of the aisle do tend to favor big government. The right-wing side of the aisle tends to favor small government, in some cases, no government at all. I've given you my spiel several times to folks who have asked me, do you trust government and things like that? Unfortunately, my opinion on big government versus small government is skewed. It's not unbiased, it's not fair, because when I make my decision based on small government and big government, I have to take into consideration the historical context of the United States and how bad small government has been to people who look like me. So if I have to admit, if I wasn't a minority, my opinion might be different. But as a minority, there is no historical benefit to wanting to promote small government. It's been horrendous to folks like me. Without big government stepping in, twice, I would either be a slave or I'd still be living in the Jim Crow era. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act. Twice, we needed big government to rescue us. So you're going to probably find it a little bit difficult to find someone like that looks like me that's unbiased and promoting for small government. I would have to ask any black person or minority that's in favor of small government, do you know history? I mean, no, that's not to say it wouldn't go back that way, or if we went to a small states' rights country, that everything would go back to slavery. I don't know that. But just like you don't want to give up your Second Amendment rights because you're afraid of tyranny, why would I want to go back to small government? When tyranny hasn't happened in the country, the stuff I'm talking about is, for the most part, the way the country was ran for quite a while. I'm going to go on to the next comment, though, or the next caller. See,
let's keep it moving. Civil rights, I hope so. CMB, what's up?
Hey, good. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. They hammering me, man. They own me, and I love it, but they own me. What's going on?
You know, a couple of things. First of all, I think that the politicians, the majority of the politicians, they're all stuck in the stupid box. And what I say by the stupid box is because they're just looking out for their ego. They got to be the ones to figure things out. If they're not figuring things out, then it's shit. And a perfect example is this Biden. When he went into office, he absolutely, as fast as he could, got everything reversed of what the guy before him did, what Trump did. And
you do realize Trump did the same thing in reversing all of Obama's.
But that's what I'm saying. But that's why I started to say that, these politicians, they need to get out of the stupid box, because they're stuck on stupid. They're worried about, me or whatever, and work for the people, because at the end of the day, the government is working for the people. I mean, of course, we would have fired them all by now, but
Yeah.
But let me just say something with the school situation. Listen, when you go into a casino to gamble, you walk into that casino, and I have a friend who runs one over here where I am. They've got a team of security people not walking around, but on cameras. With today's technology and everything that we do, and cars that can drive themselves, and we can go to the moon and all this other shit, you're going to tell me that we can't put enough surveillance in schools, all schools? I don't care. Money's not an object. Money is not an object. And I'll tell you why, because if we can throw away money and give it away to another country, we damn sure better be able to spend it on us. And I don't care if it's in the worst neighborhood school or if it's in the best academic school.
Okay, let me interject and say this. Now, you brought up the amount of security we have in casinos compared to schools. Here's the problem. In the average American school, despite all of the stuff that's happening, the average American school will never have a mass casualty event. You can leave schools wide open. Hang on, hold on. You can leave every window, every door unlocked, and most American schools will still never have a mass casualty event. When it comes to casinos, if you leave casinos unguarded, every single one of them will be robbed. So maybe
it's my fault. Maybe it's my choice of words that was not good when I said security. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about surveillance security. So everywhere you look in the world, there's surveillance cameras. Look at how they put together the 2000 Mules documentary. What did they do? They got clips of security cameras. Now we should be able.
What good is watching your kid die on camera going to do?
No. It'll never reach that point, because if you have a station base like they do in the casinos, where it's just a big room or a floor or whatever that has cameras everywhere, and it has a team of watchers on the cameras that are actually watching the cameras. That's all they do all day till they change shift. which a camera is there's a camera at the parking lot where the car comes in. There's a camera at every single door, every single window, every single classroom, and you have a team and a team. And like I said, money's not an object. You have a team of trained security guys that are watching for suspicious
Okay,
people.
let me interject. I got a few things I will say. First of all, I'm from Chicago. When you look at the size of the average Chicago school, multiple levels, each floor is probably damn near 50 yards long. You would need probably 50, 60 cameras per school. And you're talking about having surveillance people watching all of these cameras for every single school in the United States.
Yes.
And that's just watching the cameras. Now keep in mind, if I show up to school with a Glock in my backpack or an AR under my winter coat, when I pull it out, it's going to start going off immediately. The cameras are the cameras are going to do is see people falling. That's
Right,
about
but
the only thing the cameras are going to do.
Back up. First of all, I see you and you're not a student, okay? And I see you coming in. I'm already got my eyes on you if I'm the security camera. And you're talking about these large schools. I grew up in Washington D.C. in public schools, and schools were rough. The neighborhoods weren't what they, weren't that good, so the schools were rough. But if we've got, the way I look at it is, if we have $62 billion to throw at somebody else's problem, why can't we take those $62 billion, okay, and if we have to put ourselves in debt some more, we'll do it, because it's for our people, the people, and our kids and our future, because if you kill the kids, there's no future. So I think that it's a small price to pay to have a camera in every single tiny bit. And I don't care if you got 1,000 cameras on one floor. We can afford it. We can afford to spend $62 billion. We can afford cameras and security.
I get the notion that we really aren't concerned with the Ukraine. I understand it, because that comes up in every broadcast, that we should not have given the money to Ukraine. I get that part. But at the end of the day, what you're portraying, I don't think that would last no more than a few years. It would be so expensive that the money you're talking about with the Ukrainians and things like that, we would go through. I mean, to have somebody watching dozens of cameras in America per school, and there are thousands of schools, and they would also have to, I assume, be watching cameras on the outside of the school as well. If I'm approaching the school, let's say school starts at 8 o'clock, and I'm blending in with the crowd, hundreds of other students, and I got a firearm tucked under my clothing, you're probably not, even if you're watching on camera, I would probably still be able to get into school before you realize what was going on. I don't think that the surveillance cameras by themselves would be very effective at all.
Well, not by themselves, along as, I didn't mention, but I do agree with having metal detectors, and I do agree with having armed officers, along with this, but I do need the squadron of security that's watching these security cameras, and they've got their eyes on the screen, and they can't move them, because that's their job. They fuck up, they lose the whole company loses the account. So like you go into a casino, you can't put $1 sideways into a machine and think that somebody's not watching you above you.
Let me say this in regards to what you're saying. I believe you, and probably just about anybody watching that's watching right now, I could hand you a paintball gun and load it up with paintballs. And let's say I load it up with green paintballs. I'm gonna put 200 green paintballs in a hopper. And I tell you, tomorrow at 9 o'clock, this school down the street, I need to see 10 kids with green paintballs on them. You're gonna tell me you could not make that happen? You couldn't show up at that school and get 10 of those kids before the cameras or the guards or somebody stopped you? I don't think that what you're talking about would stop you. I really think that just about anybody, if they really wanted to make this happen with the guards, with the cameras, I think that they still, because if you put locks on the doors, then I'll just get the kids as they're in line waiting to
You
go in to
can't
go
lock
through
the
the metal
doors.
detector.
You can't lock the doors for fire security and stuff like that. But you can have eyes on everything. And you keep going back to, I mean, everything is not going to be 100%.
It's
I mean,
not even going to be. It's not even
if
going to
some
be
lunatic
20%.
Well, but okay, but if some lunatic goes and buys a rocket launcher, they could blow up a building from 2 blocks away. Nobody's going to see that on a surveillance camera. You understand what I'm
Well,
saying? But at
yeah.
least the place is watched.
Okay.
Is watched.
You will be able to watch the carnage. I'm gonna give you the last word, but let me just say this. I gotta part ways, and I'm gonna give you one more chance to speak before I move it on. I will just say this. The way things are set up now, all the doors are locked. When the kids come in, they're starting to lean towards metal detectors. They're going to be funneling all the kids in through one entrance. If I know the inside of the school has police and all of that, I'll just drive up in front of the school and open up on that line of kids that are right there. You're not going to be, as long as you continue allowing folks to get firearms. I think that this is the American way. I think that the assailants, as you guys always say, if you ban guns, criminals will find another way. They'll find another way to get guns on the street. Well, if you put armed guards in schools and lock the doors, criminals will find another way. If you believe criminals are savvy enough to find another way, why won't it apply in this case? There's recess. When they're walking home, you can get them. They stop at the corner store, the gas station. There's a bunch of kids in there. They will find another way.
Listen,
When you're in line, all of you guys are outside in line waiting to go through the metal detector. There's going to be a whole group of kids right there. There you go. I'll give you the last word, though. Go ahead.
All right. I was on here a few nights ago, and my first comment was the law. Okay. The law should be that if somebody goes to shoot up a place, whether it's a school, church, or grocery store, the first officers on the scene, okay, and if they've got to have a special team that's specially trained, so every department should have it. The first officers on the scene are to execute the shooter immediately. And that law needs to be known so that everybody knows that. So they know that you pull up in front of a school and you're thinking about doing something with a car or whatever, you've got officers out there that'll blow your car up. I mean, we got to take it to the extreme. If we don't take it to the extreme and we keep talking BS about little things, it's never going to solve anything.
Well, I will say this from the liberal side of me, and I know this audience, my favorite audience, my MAGA audience is not going to agree, but I believe once you started handing out firearms to everybody, you took it to the extreme. All right, I got to move it on, though. I do have to move it on. Appreciate you coming. Yeah, the minute we armed the entire populace, I think that was the extreme portion, and that's what most of the world thinks. I know I sound like an idiot in this crowd, but I strongly believe as long as the Second Amendment shall not be infringed upon, we need to prepare ourselves that this is the new norm. This is the way we're going to live, folks. This is not going to end no matter what alternatives you do. At the end of the day, this is here. This is here to stay. Stardust, good evening.
How's it going? Man,
looking good. Shout out to Kenny Rogers.
I'm working on it. Kenny Rogers, Santa Claus, I get it all. It's fine.
Looking good. What's up tonight?
So man, I got a lot of things to say. I really want to address that last caller, but I feel like you did a good job. So first, I want to address the point of arming more people, and particularly teachers. Teachers make $36,000 a year.
Bingo.
To quote Jim Jeffries, not a lot of wiggle room to be a freaking hero. I don't know if I can swear on here, but
you can swear on here. Yes, you can. We welcome. Okay. Go for it.
Not a lot of wiggle room to be a fucking hero. And even if you put armed security at schools, armed security, private security, they make an average of, I believe it was $18 an hour. Once again, not a lot of wiggle room to be a freaking hero. Also, somebody rolls up with an AR-15 and you've got Kevin. Now, Kevin may be
I,
shit hot at Call of Duty, but I don't think he's going to cut it. Look, uh, now I also want to
well,
address the
let
point
me
of
let me also add this. The shooter in Buffalo, not only did he have a long rifle, he also had body armor. And yeah, you're right. Some guy that's standing there that has never been in a gunfight, going with a pistol, he has a pistol on him, going up against a long rifle and body armor. Yeah, my guess is you're going to have a lot of folks back down. All of that heroic
zero.
stuff. There'll be some, like my other caller said, he would
Oh,
run to it, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to run from that. But go ahead.
I don't buy that for a second. Look, I was in the military, and if you're in a situation where you hear a shooter and you have no idea where they are, exactly, you have no idea what weapon they're using, you are going to find cover and concealment, first instinct, immediately. You are then going to get out of that situation. You're going to reassess and then assault through if you can.
Yeah.
If you can. And in the meantime, that guy's gunning people down. Now, that assumes you're a brave 18, 19-year-old with, who's invincible. If you're middle-aged like I am, yeah, I know. I'm only middle-aged, believe it or not. Like, your instinct as a civilian is going to be to remove yourself from that situation. And I think
Yep.
nothing highlights that more than what happened
Well,
at
let
Robb
me
Elementary, where you had cops, some of whom were armed with AR-15s, some of whom had body armor before the tactical team got there, stayed outside and stopped the parents from going in to save their kids.
well
40
what
minutes.
I'm
I think it's longer now, but
yeah, East Tennessee Patriots. You said I'm showing an AK on the screen. I'm aware of that. I'm just simply showing long rifles. But in regards to what you're talking about, I think certainly when you start talking about putting armed teachers or armed guards or whatever at every school, it's not going to be long before the bean counter starts saying, well, look, this school has a very low chance of this happening. Let's only pay them 15, 16 bucks an hour or something like that. And you're right. Eventually you're going to have something happen and one of the armed guards are going to be like, fuck this job. I mean, I get paid $15 an hour. You can fire me. I'm not going in there and dealing with that shit. I used to be a security guard years ago. And that was our own spiel. I used to work for what was it, G4S or Wackenhut, a pretty big security firm. And we used to say that if somebody comes in here with a gun, dude, I'm making $12 an hour. I'm not about to. And a lot of security guards will do that. They're not going to stand there and risk their lives when they're getting paid some shit like that. Okay, you fired me. So what? And that's what will happen. But go ahead.
Ant0961, I want to address this. Cops need tactical information. Are you really, with your full chest, going to come on a BIPOC person's live and suggest that cops need more weapons? Are you kidding me? Like, that's offensive to me, and I'm just a boring cisgender white guy. Like, I'm just that guy. The only thing that sets me apart is my beard, and I'm offended by that. Also, the previous caller keeps saying money is no concern. Money is no concern. Guess what? It is, because schools can barely afford books, and you want them to pay for an armed security guard at every entrance?
I will
And to
say
address
this
the
in
armed
regards
vets
to.
at every entrance.
I will also add this
Please.
into that comment. When you said money is no concern, we are a capitalist nation. There is nothing in regards to American life where money is no concern. I don't care if it's your health care, like you said, your children, at every aspect of our lives in the capitalist country, there are folks who are trying to profit off of it or who are concerned with how much it costs. So the notion that, I mean, how many homeless vets you got out there? If money was no concern, they would not be homeless, right? Money is always a concern in
That's
this
a
country.
perfect
That's what
segue.
capitalism is about. Go ahead.
I love this. Man, I wish we did a podcast together, because that was a perfect segue. A lot of people say put armed vets at every school. I did a little research on this. The average high school in the United States has 8 entrances. The average.
Wow.
There are 130,000 schools in the U.S. Find me 1 million vets that are willing to work for what an armed security guard person gets paid, and post them up at every entrance to every school in the U.S. That is asinine. It is absolutely asinine to suggest that we should just arm vets. Vets would definitely protect kids. Hey, guess what? They might, but you know what a vet's reaction is to a shooter? It's what I said about the Walmart thing. You withdraw, assess, and assault through, if you can. I mean,
Let me ask you this question, Chardock. Let me ask you this question because somebody asked this in the comments. I believe the quote was, "Dude, then how do you suggest we fix it?" What would you suggest to deal with what we're dealing with, mass casualty events in elementary and educational institutions? What would you suggest?
God, another perfect segue. I suggest that we deal with firearms the same way we did in the military, which is
elaborate.
Okay, if you have a personally owned weapon on post, you check that weapon in to a armorer, an armory, provost marshal's office in most cases. Now, it's been about 25 years since I was in. That was the case with us. So you check your weapon in, and when you want to take your weapon out, you go, you turn in a slip like a valet, you withdraw your weapon, you go do the thing that you say you're going to do with it, you bring it back, you turn it back in. Why not have a municipal armory that acts as a centralized repository for a particular area? It doesn't have to be a city. It could potentially even be at the neighborhood level if you want. But also what this does, this is for the tyranny nuts that think they're going to stand up against the United States government. Let's say I own 20 guns. I check them in with my armorer. Tyranny breaks loose. War breaks out. I then can go to my armorer, check out one of my guns, and the other 19 can be distributed amongst the rest of the populace that's fighting against the tyranny.
Yeah, that's not going to work. I would just say right off the bat, if there's going to be a tyrannical situation, the first thing they would do is blow up your armory. I mean, that's what I would suggest. I mean, we know where the guns, that's what they're doing in the Ukraine right now. They would just blow up your armory.
I thought about that too. Yeah, I thought about that too. And the way that you do it is you make sort of smaller scale armories. And I almost feel like it would have to be kind of privatized in some way.
Okay, let me stop you. Let me hold on. Hold on. Let me stop you. Sure. I'm clearly a liberal, but where you're at, you're so far to the left that even I'm like, this shit ain't gonna work. Let's come back to you're not going to get even a lot of liberals are not going to be in favor of that. So let's not get too far off the beaten path. That's not going to work. Nobody's going to hand their guns over to some kind of armory. Even I'm not going to do that. So let's not get crazy.
But here's the thing, like, why not? It's good enough for the military.
It's not going to happen. It's not even a pipe dream. I might as well dream about fantasies with Halle Berry. That's not going to happen. There's no chance that's going to happen.
Fair enough. I just fair enough. I'll say that.
Okay. It's one thing for a politician to suggest something that folks shout down or have a complaint about. What you're suggesting would get you killed. That is just absolutely not going to happen. Well, look, I do want to move it on. I got somebody else that's trying to get it. Hey, look, you got to follow. I really enjoyed your unique nature of coming across. So this is particularly a right-wing program. Most of my audience, my preferred audience is right. Obviously, you're left. You're welcome back anytime. You got to follow. So come on back through anytime, man.
Have a great night.
You too, Chardock. Chardock. He had a lot to say. He's not going to be popular on this program, but I enjoyed Chardock. Threw a little bit of cola in, if you know what I mean. Made a Long Island iced tea out of it. I like Chardock. You're awesome, brother. Thank you. East Tennessee Patriot. I appreciate that. Arming all teachers and vets defending schools is ridiculous as well, not going to work. McGorrow, and hang on a second, Big Rick. Hold on one second, Big Rick. I do believe that. I do believe that arming teachers and putting security guards in schools and things like that, I know the right supports that. For me, that sounds ridiculous. It's expensive. It's cumbersome. It leaves a lot of room for mistakes. If these folks go in school and have a bad day and beat the hell out of some kids or accidentally shoot a kid or something else, one of them gets disarmed. There's all types of moving parts that could go wrong with that. But at the end of the day, if the primary goal is to defend the Second Amendment at all costs, we may have to deal with some slipshod, ridiculous solution like that. That may be where we are heading if the goal is to maintain the Second Amendment at all costs. Slick Rick or Big Rick, not the rapper, Big Rick. What's going
Yes,
on?
sir. Hey, this argument is the fix is going to be very, very hard. Again, I'm a retired officer after 22 years. We've practiced active shooters drills when I was on the street. And what we would do, we had to go in. The first, 3 or 4 officers that arrived at a situation had to get together, go in, and we had to try to find that active shooter just to stop the bloodshed. But even with that, if you arm a teacher or a janitor or a private security person, it's different shooting at a target as opposed to shooting at a live person. There's a lot of different things that happen. I was involved in a shooting, and I was amazed at what my body did during that shooting. I got tunnel vision. I had to fight through that. My hearing completely got suppressed. I let off one shot. If you've been to a range and you didn't have earphones in and you shot, your ears would ring.
Yeah.
When I was involved in my shooting, my ears did not ring. So I had to fight through that. So if you take a teacher and train them to shoot at a target, and then they actually have an active shooter that actually happens, you're going to behave in a way that you have not accounted for. And you may end up injuring either another teacher or possibly a student trying to protect other students. So to me, that's not a fix. Again, this is going to be a hard fix on trying to do this. And as long as we have weapons, we're going to have these issues.
Yeah.
We're going to continue having them. They're not going to stop, because in order for that to stop, we have to give up a right, which we're not going to give up. The
Right.
average American is not going to give away their guns. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not a gun
Yeah.
nut, but I've been around guns for over 25 years being in law enforcement. Some of the ideas that people are trying to come up with are very asinine. They're very crazy. The one gentleman was talking about, with the cameras and having cameras. Even like you said, even if you had a camera at every door and every hallway, the only thing you're actually going to do is record the carnage that's going to go on in that location. You're not
Yeah.
going to stop it, because once the first shot goes off, now you have to call the police if you don't have a resource officer in the school. And if a
Let me
resource
ask you
officer's
something.
in the school, go ahead, sir.
Let me ask you something real quick. Someone in the comments, this is addressed to you. How do you feel about schools being gun-free zones, or just gun-free zones in general? How do you feel about that?
Where I worked at, we had drug-free zones. Never stopped any drugs from being sold.
Excellent.
Never
Okay.
stopped anything. Just because you got a sign that says, we got speed limit signs, 65, 55, 75. People run 90, 85 miles an hour. Just because you have a sign, it's not going to stop. If I wake up one morning out of my mind and I grab one of my weapons and I decide to go to a location and do something, nobody knows what my mindset is until I start shooting. So nobody knew what this kid's mindset was. He had shot his grandmother. No one knew that when he got to that school. No one knew what had happened at his grandmother's house when he wrecked that car. So trying to red ball situations and trying to figure out what somebody's going to do before they do it is impossible. It's human nature. You have no idea what a person is going to do. The only thing we can do is try to mitigate as much damage as we can. So police departments and schools have to set up, if you hear shots going off and I'm in a classroom, I need to lock my door as a teacher and put my kids in the safest place in my class that I can, and pray to God that this person is not going to come in my classroom. If you're in the hallway or if you're in an area where this person is actively shooting, then you have to find some kind of cover or concealment to try not to get shot. But as long as we have weapons on the street, we're going to have these problems. Prohibition is not going to work. Getting rid of all the guns is not going to work, because anybody's still going to be able to, as long as you have gun manufacturers, we're going to have weapons. And I don't see Smith &
So what?
Wesson, Glock, or any of them shutting down their factories.
So what you're suggesting is very similar to what I've said on the last 2 or 3 broadcasts, that mass casualty events in schools is just from this point on part of the American life. We
It's
just
just
can come on. Yeah,
correct.
go ahead.
Correct. Just like you, I think you said you were from Chicago. Look at the
Yes.
gun violence they have in Chicago. And I don't care
Yeah.
what kind of laws that they have in place in Chicago, it's not stopping or slowing down the gun violence. The only way that we're
Well,
going to do it, go
let
ahead.
me say this because I hear folks, I even got folks in the comments. For some reason, Chicago, because it can be tied to Obama liberalism, it's always brought up in, even though
Correct.
St. Louis and other cities are more violent. I will
Correct.
say this in regards to gun laws. The countries that have passed gun laws that have been successful all did it federally. And what I mean
Hmm.
by that is, as long as I can go, let's say Chicago has strong gun laws, but they're
Hmm.
surrounded by Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa,
Straw
Missouri.
purchases.
All these states have very relaxed gun laws. Fact
Correct.
is, if Chicago's inside of the circle I'm putting up, and you
Hmm.
can enter and exit the circle without being searched or held accountable, then the only way gun laws are going to work are they have to be federal. Whereas you cannot enter a quarantined area without being searched and checked for weapons. You can
Correct.
enter Chicago back and forth without anybody checking you for weapons, which a lot of
Correct.
Chicagoans get their weapons from Indiana. Indiana's a
That's right.
5-minute, 5-mile drive up the road.
That's right.
So the only way any type of gun laws in America would work is it would have to be federal. That's how Norway, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Japan, that's all of their gun laws are federal. You cannot have a gun law that only pertains to one city when there's no checkpoints to enter and exit that city. Go ahead.
Correct. My mother, she lived in she moved back home to Alabama. I'm from New Jersey. So New Jersey has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. I went to visit my mother. So they don't have gun stores in Alabama. They have pawn shops and they have gun, like large shows. So I go into the pawn shop and there's a Mac 10 in the box in the counter. I'm surprised because, again, I'm from New Jersey. You can't own this gun in New Jersey. I asked the lady there, what do I need to do to get that gun? She says, do you have an Alabama driver's license? I said, no. She said, just go get an Alabama driver's license. We'll do a background check and you'll walk out the door with $300 in cash. I could have put that gun in my car, drove back to New Jersey, and sold that gun on the street for probably $1,500.
Yeah. And that's
So
what I'm
you're
talking about.
right. You're just, again, because of the Second Amendment, this is just part and parcel of what we're going to have to deal with. No one is going to want to get rid of their guns. Once you
Yeah.
start taking them, then we're going to have anarchy in this country. And it's sad to say that the human condition is such that we are here talking about, 19 little children that were gunned down in a school with 2 teachers. And then a week prior, it was 10 people in a grocery store. But it has not changed. And it's, again, I don't think it's going to change. And this is coming from a person who did 22 years in law enforcement. And we had to go in. I couldn't stand outside of a school hearing gunshots going off and not enter that school with me and 2 other officers trying to find this active shooter.
Do you believe your other brothers in blue could all be dependent on to go inside of it? Let's say any other your brothers in blue, if they arrived to a school and they were the first officer on scene, do you believe you could depend on all of them to go in that school with no backup the minute they heard those shots?
Here's what would happen. If I pulled up and we got an active shooter and I got 4 other cars that pulled in and I said, okay, we stack up back to back and we go in and we hear the shots and we try to find the person. If I look and there's only 2 other people behind me and then the 4th person stayed outside, well, I'm going to deal with him after the incident is over if my life is still intact. But again, you're dealing with the human condition. A police officer is a human being. And 9 times out of 10, when I had my shooting, was a home invasion. After in the middle of the shooting, I was thinking about my family, but I also was thinking about the persons that were in that home that the person was coming there to try to harm. So I had to make up in my mind. And I knew in 99 when I got on the job what there was a possibility of me not coming home at the end of the day. And I said, okay, I have no problem with that. Everybody can't do that, even when you put the uniform on. And it's not bravery, It's just something innate in a person to want to go into a home or into a building where you know you may not come out. There was a gentleman in a Walmart who had a weapon, heard the active shooter, didn't know that there was two people, went after the active shooter. The
He
one
got
person
killed.
lagged behind and got killed.
Yep. I think
And
it was
got
the
killed.
wife. I saw that video. Yep. I think
Correct.
it was the wife.
Correct.
Yep.
So you're asking a human who doesn't have the training, doesn't have the mentality that an officer has to go in, and then not every officer that puts the uniform on should be a police officer, because you
Let me
know there's
say
some
this.
things you have to give up.
Yeah, and let me say this in regards to what we're talking about right now. I got a big screen behind me, and CNN is on there, and they have and I know how this audience feels about CNN. That's fine, but I see the banner says the police stated that gunman was killed about 1 hour after entering the school. So he was in that school for an hour before they took his life. So
Yeah.
just wanted you to know that.
And I think that by the time, I think SWAT had probably killed him, which they're the ones who are trained to go in. They have the helmets on, the body armor, the full body armor. It's different as a patrol officer. The only armor you have is your vest when you come in. You don't have anything on your head. You don't have anything covering your shins or your knees or your lower extremities. You just have your handgun, some departments, maybe a shotgun, and then, all departments don't have long guns. You know what I mean? But you got to go in to mitigate. You're not going to stop people from getting killed, but you have to stop as many from getting killed as you possibly can. You know what I mean?
You make it for a really good. This is a really good perspective, because I haven't had anybody like from your standpoint. Certainly not someone that's been involved in a shooting. But let me ask you this from a law enforcement perspective: what would happen if you actually told your superior officer something that I was too scared to go in? I froze. I was afraid. What would happen to you if, let's say, you did, like in Parkland, Florida? That officer did not go in there while the guys were in there. Now, this is obviously the second time we're being able to see that officers do not always go in. But what would happen to you from your superiors, or period, if you chose not to go in out of fear?
I think my superiors would have to dismiss that officer, because this is the job that you accepted. When you put your hand up and say you swear, you knew that there's always a possibility of you not coming home. And you have to fight through the fear. Car stops. I didn't know what a person had. I did a car stop and got several guns out of a car stop. I did not know they had guns until I got people out of the car. We were handcuffed, and then we were able to search the car. But every car stop that I did, I was nervous. I was apprehensive. But I still had to go and do my job. Because if I don't do my job, then there's always a possibility that someone else is going to be harmed or going to be hurt because I didn't do my job.
That's interesting. So let me ask you this. Wow, you're definitely one of the most interesting callers I've had for a while. But let me say this also. Okay, you said when you made traffic stops, you were fearful because you didn't know what was in the car. From an LEO standpoint, from a law enforcement officer, how do you feel about the Second Amendment, knowing that the citizens can be more heavily armed than you, the difficulty it presents in your job, the stresses you're talking about? How do you personally feel about our country allowing the citizens to potentially be more heavily armed than you are, and you're the one that's supposed to maintain law and order?
It's the laws of the land, and you know that. So
do you think that's a smart law?
Outside of a law enforcement standpoint, no, I don't. I don't think anyone should be more heavily armed than a police officer. But the laws are the laws. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I understand that I could, again, in Jersey, expectation from me is no one should be more heavily armed than I am. Because again, you can't, I got an AR-15. I still had to jump through certain hoops, being a law enforcement officer, to get that AR-15. They still had to do a background check. They still had to do fingerprints. Everything still had to go through the state police in the state of New Jersey in order for me to go to a licensed dealer and purchase my AR-15. So I had to do everything a regular citizen had to do. But from a law enforcement standpoint, a person who has purchased this gun illegally, has it in his car, which he should not have. I don't know that, but I'm mentally prepared to go, I'm prepared for whatever this person may come out of this car with. So I just never just walked up on a car or walked into a house or walked into any situation. I always thought worst case scenario. So if we were to drive up to that school, I heard the shots going off. I'm like, okay, where are these shots coming from? Now you're inside of a school, so you're going to have echoes from all out from throughout that building. So you're not going to be able to exactly pinpoint where this person is. So you got to move slow and steady. And you got to look to see if he comes around the corner, can I disappear from him? Can I put my body in such a place where he can't get a good shot on me? You know what I mean? So you always have to think tactically. I don't know what these officers were thinking. I can't sit back and Monday morning quarterback. I can't say that they were thinking about their family more than they were thinking about the job or thinking about the children or the teachers that were inside the school. I can't say that. All I can say is if it's true that they did not go in once they got there, that's not a good look on them and on law enforcement
Let me
as a
ask you
whole.
this. Let me ask you, and by the way, I guess the first question I want to ask you is I have someone that wants to join and speak to you specifically on this subject. Would you be
Sure.
okay with that?
Not
Okay.
a problem. Not a problem.
Second question, I'll do that. Second question I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you is, would you support some type of legislation going above and beyond terminating an officer if they cower, like being charged with some type of treason offense or something? Do you think that may be a solution?
I do. I believe if you know going into this job, if you act with cowardice, you can lose your job. I believe that is definitely something that should be looked into.
I mean a potential criminal punishment. Like if children die because you were a coward,
Oh,
you
yeah.
could be criminally held responsible.
Listen, if I'm on the street, when I was on the job, if I was off duty and there was something that happened in my view and I failed to act, I could be charged.
Okay.
I could be charged because
Negligence.
I have a duty to act.
Okay. All right. Big Daddy Russ, another
How are
viewer
you?
wanted to. Okay, Big Daddy Russ. Good evening. What did you want to add or speak to this gentleman about?
That he speaks from experience as you do as well. That a lot
I
of
don't have
people
his
don't.
experience. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm not gonna. I
No,
don't false flag. I don't have his experience at all. But go ahead.
yeah, but I would like him to help the people in the guest to understand the correlation between uh, the human being observing something
Mhm.
traumatic, trying to understand it, and then the amount of time average that lapses before they react, and then put that scenario together in the context of they hear something that they only assume is a gunshot, and then
Correct.
witness somebody carrying an item. I mean, we remember this from school, looking down a hallway and the sunlight from the front yard shining through the windows. You can't see somebody's physical features. You can
Mhm.
just see somebody in silhouette because most
Mhm.
schools have very few windows out, other than in the classrooms. So
Mhm.
hallways cannot compete with the light coming through the doors at the ends, and just, I liken this to the conversations I've had with all of my law enforcement friends and myself,
Mhm.
9 years in the Marine Corps, that when the shit hits the fan, it happens so fast
Correct.
that I go
He's
back
he's
to
asking. Okay, it sounds like you're asking when the shit hits the fan, how long does it take for the human brain to process that and analyze that there is an active threat? Is that what you're suggesting?
yes, yeah, yep,
Okay.
yep,
All right, sir.
Okay, so think about it like this. So you're coming home after the sun goes down. It's somewhere near July 4th, not July 4th, but out of the corner of your eye, you see somebody walking, you hear a pop. Your initial thought process could be, is there somebody shooting? Now you have to work through your emotions going, did I just hear somebody pull the trigger? Did I just see a guy run or move in the darkness? now you have to rationalize everything that has just gone on. And the brain is a funny thing. The brain does things to you, gives you a scenario, because what has happened to us through our lives brings us to the point of today. So if you've been involved in a shooting, you hear a pop, you instantly think somebody's shooting. I have to stop to make sure, okay, let me make sure I know exactly what's going on so that I don't assume that I know what's going on. I guarantee you, a lot of people in the school, when they first heard the pop, they did not think that somebody was shooting. Then once they heard pop, 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 they were like, okay, this isn't normal. So now you get an adrenaline dump.
Yep.
Again, now you get the tunnel vision. Now the hair stands up on your arms. Now you got to think, I got all these kids in front of me. What do I do? Right. We always revert back to our training. That's why we train as much as we do. It becomes rote. It's like football players.
So what happens with the teacher or security guard that's had no training at all?
Exactly.
And that's why you can't have a teacher in a school or a janitor in a school with a loaded weapon thinking that they're going to behave or react the way that they should. Because, say, for instance, if a teacher runs into their classroom, they don't know that's the teacher, and they shoot the teacher because they've just been startled.
Yep.
So now you've killed someone. Now you have a friendly fire situation.
Yep.
So now you can't put people in that. They're there to teach.
Yeah.
They're not there to protect. They may break up a fight between a couple students every now and again, but to pull a trigger on a human being with a heart and is completely different than standing there at a gun range, shooting down range at a target that's not moving.
Wow.
That is not moving. And those are the things that we have to think of when you start talking about bringing armed personnel into a school. Like you said before, if I'm a security guard and I'll give it a high end, $20. I'm not giving my life away for $20. And most people aren't, most of the guards aren't going to tell you this. They're not my kids. Yeah. I was put in here just for the visual deterrent.
Yeah.
I wasn't put in here to be SWAT.
Yeah.
I was put in here with the hopes that somebody would see me and turn and go the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's it.
In
that even happened. Go ahead, Big Daddy.
In my circle of friends, like I said, it's mostly all law enforcement, and I use the example of, unless you train with your blood pressure as high as you think you can possibly get it, you're not going to be able to react when your blood pressure is as high as it can get. And I use the example, pull up every YouTube video of an dash cam footage of some police officer getting shot at by some guy and count how many bullets hit everything except each other. And that's the great example of, the I call it the redneck theory, and I don't mean any disrespect because I am one, but I carry a gun with me everywhere I go. And the kind of joke in our head is I would put anybody down if I saw them a threat. Well, our logic tells us in our dream of being the hero is that we're going to witness this kid walking up to the front door. And that's never what happens, because a cop on the side of the road parks far enough away and sits long enough to assess the threat, and then it all goes to shit, and there's 40 rounds laying all over the ground and in the cars and in the street, and nobody's been hit. So
okay,
and then think about this.
I got one other gentleman I want to add to this. I got one other person I want to. We're in the same line of topic. He's a frequent viewer to the program. Carrie, you wanted to add something to this?
Yeah. I was just gonna add the fact that I believe everybody has a right to carry a firearm. I don't care who they are, as long as they are mentally stable. We as a society, instead of looking to government and our politicians to fix our problems, we need to work on ourselves and how we approach everybody. The reason I'm a frequent viewer here is because of this man right here. He lets me come in, he lets me say my piece, he hears me, and that right there is a lot.
And he's handsome.
And yeah,
You guys are making me, you making a black man blush, but go ahead.
but saying we've got to come together as as a whole within society, and just stop and listen to somebody every now and then. Compliment somebody every now and then. You might change their whole day and their whole viewpoint, and might
Yeah.
change that thought process that makes these people go out and do this crazy stuff. You never
Okay,
know.
well, let me ask you this. I believe well, Big Rick. I got a question I want to ask you, Kerry. But before I get to that, Big Rick, someone because I was talking about criminal negligence for officers that cower, and I believe somebody in the comments stated that the Supreme Court has ruled that officers have no duty to act. Have you heard of anything like that?
We
I
in the state of New Jersey, we have a duty to act. I can't. So if I walk into a 7-Eleven and they're being held up, I have a duty to act. Now, the smallest part of that duty is to call an on duty officer to come out. Me, I'm going to take a position. Hopefully, there's no shooting that's going to start. I'm not going to run in because I'm off duty. The person doesn't know me as an officer. I'm not going to run in and say, hey, police officer, because the first thing he's going to do is turn and start to shoot towards me. I'm going to hopefully allow him to get out of that store, to get out of the way of other folks, and then maybe at that point I'll draw down police officer, and the only person that's going to have a gun battle is me and him. But these are the thoughts that a person has to have. You just can't run in. It's not the Wild Wild West. Just because you got a gun, you're going to think that the person's going to drop their gun. It's not going to happen that way. And like the
Yeah.
gentleman said, everything happens in at the blink of an eye, very, very fast.
Yeah.
The one
Okay.
thing
All
nobody
right.
talks about, and I'm sorry, real quick, is that the officers that went in after this gentleman, after he had been in there shooting, they had to step over a lot of these kids' bodies as they were going in looking for this person. So think
Wow.
about, you have that in your mind that this kid is laying there because you can't stop to help the kid because now you still got to stop the threat. So you got to continue on through the school trying to find out where this person is. It's a lot of mental stuff going on at the time.
Wow. And like I said, I do appreciate your perspective because it
Not a
is
problem.
so unique.
Not a problem.
Real quick, folks, for you guys who are watching, this is damn good content. I need 25,000 likes. 280 plus, touch your damn screens. This is good damn content. Okay. Kerry, I wanted to ask you this because, and I would also ask you this, Big Daddy. I think Big Rick, we've already discussed this. Kerry and Big Daddy, do you believe that mass casualty events are just simply the American way? If we want to maintain the Second Amendment, what did it say? Shall not be infringed upon. We're not going to do anything at all. No, zero limitations on Second Amendment rights. Is there any way outside of that we can stop this or limit it, or do we have to understand that mass casualty events in schools and things like that is going to be the American way? What about you,
Nope.
Kerry? How do you feel about that?
As I was just saying earlier, how we approach each other in society, the train of thought, the train of process, how we, there's different ways, like that, one shooting was real.
Let me stop you. What you're presenting, in my opinion, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I'm fine with that. I encourage insults and criticism all day, but you're taking a kumbaya approach. In my opinion, that's not going to happen. Us getting along and things. I'm talking about until we come up with some kind of solution. Do you believe mass casualty events is the normal way of life? I don't think the kumbaya approach. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But you can give me your spiel.
I believe it already has happened, and you just have to know where to look. That one mass shooting was racial, correct? I've looked this guy up, he's
Buffalo, New York, and the subway shooting in New York, and the Buffalo grocery store. Both of those were based on intolerance. Yes.
Yes, I was saying that there was a guy I looked up. I saw him do a video. He attended KKK meetings as a black man, and he changed their whole perspective by sitting down and talking to them. And
Damn, he brave as hell.
you can look it up. He attended their meetings and changed their whole. He made them drop the whole KKK and walk away. So essentially, it's how you approach every situation. Yes, you can make a change. Your voice is powerful. It's very powerful. All you have to do is speak up and know how to speak up and how to approach the situation. But you got to have courage to do it.
Well, I will say this. I can just simply say from the historical context of slavery, Jim Crow, women not being able to vote, there's not enough people in this country that's going to speak up. Otherwise, those events would not have went on for so many years and decades that they went on. I agree that speaking up, there were abolitionists who spoke up. There are folks who are not a fan of Jim Crow, but it's at the end of the day, it's not enough of those folks to inflict change. History has shown it's generally not enough for those folks to speak up. So that's where I'm asking the question from. I mean, are we going to have to accept that this stuff is going to be the normal way of life?
I think one of the biggest hurdles to overcome on the individual perspective of it is to understand that in most of these situations, the firearm is a coward's weapon. And until the person that has the ability to pick up a weapon doesn't and has the courage to discuss, or as everyone, I can tell by we're all about the same age. Remember when we were in school and we had a problem with somebody? We jumped the fence after school and we beat each other's ass and we became friends afterwards. I mean, that's the way it was.
Yeah.
There weren't mass shootings back when we were in school. So
No.
You froze up, young man.
there needs to take place.
Okay. All right. Oh, unfortunately, I think a lot of that stuff, and I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, we're probably not going to get those portions of history back. And this is where like I said, I know my audience leans right, but the liberal in me, at least from my own standpoint, which is why I asked you multiple times, I cannot imagine what a shall not be infringed upon motto of any kind of way that's going to really put a substantial impact in this. I just think it's going to be the way of life. And I heard you, Officer Big Rick, you said the same thing. And I believe, Big Daddy, you're kind of suggesting the same thing to some degree too, that one way or another, this is going to continue happening.
Even if we can have conversations and maybe you can stop that one person, but what about the 10 or 15 others that you're not going to be able to reach?
Yeah.
We're going to always have those individuals, because most of the mass shootings aren't done by 2-3 people. It's normally done by one individual. No one knows what this gentleman's mindset was that morning he woke up and decided to go to this school and do what he did. I think you're just going to have to, they're going to have to do a research on his past to find out, maybe, if we can, why he decided to do what he did that morning. You know what I mean? But, again, I try to tell people homicides is something that you're never going to stop because it's a passion of a person. And I've drove up on corners, I'm sure, and a person may have wanted to shoot an individual, but I was just there at that moment. They saw the police, they saw the police unit, and they didn't do it. But they caught the person a couple of days later when there wasn't a cop around and decided to do it then.
Right.
So, we're just, the human condition is something else. We're lovely persons, but we can be some of the worst persons or worst people at times. You know what I mean? So, why it's different than it was, I was born in '66. We never heard of school shootings. Like the gentleman said, the only thing we had to do was go to school, and we had a problem with somebody. The one person that I had the biggest fight in elementary school became one of my best friends growing up. You know what I mean? And that's just how we handled it. And, I tried to talk to people, and instead of having to fight, because there was always a negative outcome that was going to happen once violence got a hold of any kind of situation. Unfortunately, these younger generation children, they had things that we didn't have. They had, a lot of TV, a lot of social media, the video games with the guns. So guns is just a thing to them. You know what I mean? And I think what has happened is taking a life to somebody today isn't that bad for some people. You know what I mean?
Well,
It just
let me say this though, in regards to that, because I've heard folks talk about how much adult material children these days have. Whether you're talking video games, R-rated television shows, or just simply the fact they can go on YouTube and see folks being lives being taken in real time. But the question I have is that most of that media, most of those video games, and most of that stuff is available to children in other first world countries, and they do not have the same mass casualty. When I lived in Australia, for instance, they got access to the same video games, whether it's Call of Duty or Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto. You can get those games there. Most of their television programs come from here. So the Law and Orders, the cops, all of that stuff is shown there. So I don't, and the same thing with mental illness. America does not have a patent on mental illness. Mental illness is around the world. So for some reason, what is it about Americans that are making them pick up arms and hurt people that is not happening in any of these other countries?
I think
the coping mechanism is missing.
A coping mechanism, yeah. And I think that all starts with basically what I was saying earlier. As a society, you know, it starts at the house. It starts in your own
What
home.
is a coping mechanism, though?
Well, there's many coping mechanisms, but it's different for each person. Like for me, I've got PTSD from 3 tours overseas, and the way I deal with stuff, you've been witnessing the way I deal with it. I talk to people, just random whatever, you know. I get out, I walk around, I'll smoke 20 or 30 cigarettes, but you know, all that's damage to myself, but I stay away from other people when I'm doing it, you know, because in my mind, I've got to clear my mind and focus my mind on something else so that it's not over here focusing on my PTSD. You know what I'm saying? That's a coping. That's idea.
But Carrie, you know that you need to cope with your PTSD. You're aware of it.
Yes.
There are some people that have mental issues. I won't say mental illness, but they have mental issues and aren't aware that how bad their mental issues are.
Yes.
And
they're
they have
undiagnosed.
they're undiagnosed, and then they have no one to have a conversation with. I'm a proponent of police officers seeking counseling, especially after an event like this, because this is going to haunt you the rest of your life being involved in this situation. Even if you didn't go in, you're going to question your own person for the rest of your life. Is why didn't I go into the school?
Oh, absolutely.
If had I gone in, would have been 10 kids instead of 19.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So we are a nation of. Go ahead.
I think for the people in the guests in the comments, one of the best examples that we can go back on the coping mechanism is in the sort of the mid stages of COVID. Do you remember seeing that video, that story of the kid that was playing a video game and broke his TV screen? And then, his dad got him a new TV and he broke his TV screen again and he didn't know what to do and he ended up hanging himself.
Yeah, he killed.
You know, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he ended up hanging himself in front of his baby sister in the closet because he didn't know what to do about breaking the TV screen again.
Yeah, he
so
felt
when you can't fathom a option out, then the coping mechanism is completely absent. You know, when if you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, then what is there? No other options. So what's the first thing this poor kid? I think he was 13 or 14 years old.
He's very young. Yeah, he's very young.
Yeah, and it just broke my mind. But I'll leave you all with this. I have to go to bed before my wife divorces me. But
same here.
You know, everybody that I train with a pistol, I start the conversation off just like this. Picture yourself in a grocery store, halfway up an aisle, right in the middle, and all of a sudden you hear gunshots. Which way are you going to run?
to the gun
Sports or
shop
fro?
to it.
Yeah.
That's my. But I mean,
First
that's
thing
not.
is you got to figure out where the hell that sound came from,
Correct.
and then your exit strategy, and then you've got to process that information. How long is that going to take? At the very same time I do that, one of my buddies is behind him with two 2x4s about 6 inches long, and he bangs them together. And watch everybody do the same thing. They all take their hands and they go like this. Not one person in those classes reaches for their weapon. It's never happened in 15 years of training pistols.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to. It's a continual thing. It's not. It's just not a one time going to the range. You have to mentally prepare yourself for getting involved in a gun battle. You have to.
Yeah.
It's just
You
you
have
you
to
don't
put
wake up one
yourself-
morning and you're a
Put
you're a hero.
yourself through physical hell and then shoot efficiently and proficiently to even be able to react when it all goes to shit around you. Because just like you said, everybody goes to the range with these fancy earmuffs that they can talk until the gun goes off. But when you touch one of those things off and you don't have any hearing protection in, one of two things is going to happen. You are not going to hear shit, or you're going to hear a whole bunch of ringing. And you don't know what until you do it.
And just to touch on there a little bit more.
Go ahead, Kerry.
The reason why I said to it is because I've been overseas 3 times. I was an infantryman. That was my job. So what he's saying is absolutely facts. I was trained to do it though. I know what to do in that situation. But a lot of people don't, and I understand that they've never been in that situation. But it could come to that point where you are in that situation. That's why I'm a big 2A supporter, because if you're a good person, you've got it. I feel safer with you having it, personally.
Well, I would dare say, listen to all of you guys. Whereas Big Daddy, you've instructed folks in firearms carry. You've got multiple tours and obviously 22 years of service. All of you guys are fucking amazing. But 90% of Americans that have firearms probably do not have anywhere near the training of any of you, including yours truly. So that's the only issue I have is that I do not believe the average American gun owner has anywhere near enough training for really any major event.
Yeah, and Rick has the information on this to expound upon before I go. But 70, I think it's between 60 and 70% of firearms injuries are an untrained homeowner buying a new weapon, clearing rooms in the middle of the night because they heard a trash can fall over, and they shoot themselves in the thigh or in the ass cheeks when they tuck their pistol in the waistband after they've cleared their rooms.
Real good segue. So me and my wife bought a new house
Guys,
last
have
September.
a great night. I really appreciate you all. God bless. Thank you for your service, all 3 of you.
Thanks, Big Daddy.
Awesome. All right, okay.
Me and my wife moved into a new house last September. You know, what I did was my wife went to work, I cleared my weapon, and I just went through my house as if someone was in my house. I do that probably once or twice a week so that if something does happen, I don't have to think where certain things are in my house. If I hear a noise in the middle of the night, I can get up with all the lights off because my sidearm has a flashlight on and I know exactly where everything is in my house. I know how to clear my stairwells. I know how to clear my living room. I know how to clear my family room. So if I hear something in my family room, I know exactly where I need to be at the top of my steps. And I'm going to stop and listen before I take a step to go down those steps to see if I can hear where this person is in my home. The average gun owner that you have in your house is not you're not clearing your own house once or twice a week.
No, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. Most people are not doing that. So
if you're not doing it at your home, you're not going to do it at work.
Fair enough. Well, listen, folks, I do got a few other folks in the comments. This has by far been one of the most interesting conversations that I can have. But I got to part ways with you two gentlemen because I have been somewhat ignoring the audience because of the conversation was so interesting. So
I appreciate it, my brother.
Hey, definitely will follow you. Feel free to follow the program as well. And by the way, folks, the next morning, if for anybody who would want to see this discussion again, the few folks that may even want to do something like that, but if you go on YouTube to The Handsome Liberal, this will be there, titled the same way it's titled now on YouTube, and you can watch it in the exact same format. If you called in or you want to hear yourself or talk to somebody else about what happened on this, it's all of my broadcasts every night. They're on YouTube. The Handsome Liberal. Just go there and you'll see the entire broadcast. Thank you for you both
Gentlemen, have
coming
a good
through.
night.
Absolutely. 22 years of service, son. You too, Kerry. You have a good one, man.
Hey, you do the same.
All right. 22 years. God bless both of you.
That was amazing. Okay, let me get back to the comments. I do apologize for those who I did not get to, but that clearly was a very interesting exchange back and forth. There are a lot
living. In fact, a few of the folks that were in there that were waiting, I believe, dropped out. But I wanted to hear those guys because they were all presenting this from a different perspective. Certainly, all of them have been around. They know their way around firearms, etc. So I did want to hear them. Alaskan living. You're in
Yeah, no,
Alaska.
you're good.
Right?
What's up?
Nothing at all. How you in Alaska right now?
Yeah, swear to God.
Okay. That's on my bucket list. I've been to all of the lower 48 states. I've never been to Hawaii or Alaska. I've seen Hawaii from the air, but I've never been to Alaska. That's a bucket list. How are you doing this evening? Is it warm there, or is it very cold?
It is. It's in like the 60s and 70s right now. We're very lucky in this time of year.
Okay. Does the sun actually go down?
Where I'm at, no, the sun does not go down until September. So we got 24-hour sunshine.
Oh my God! How do you sleep through that shit?
So a lot of people here, you just buy blackout curtains and just tuck them closed whenever you go to bed.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Gotta,
and then in the wintertime, is it just the opposite where the sun never comes up?
Yeah, so I think for here it's about 4 to 5 hours of daylight in December. So it'll come up around like 10:30-ish, 11, go down at like 2 or 3. So it's
I gotta ask a question. I mean, I hate to even ask something like this. We were just talking about suicide. What is it like for citizens when they do not have any access to sunlight for months on end like that?
So I'd say my first winter here, I got kind of depressed because you're not used to it yet. One thing for people when they come up here is they're not getting any vitamin D, so they need to supplement vitamin D. When you do that, it's like it changes your whole mood. Like you will go from like kind of like lower energy, kind of depressive, like it changes you entirely. And also just getting outside, doing stuff, ice fishing, skiing, just being able to be physically active, that's a huge part of it. And a lot of people, they don't do that, or they live generally unhealthy lives. So it's already harder for them as is.
Yeah, I can only. Okay, what was your state your point? What was your purpose? I just wanted to, because Alaska's very interesting to me. But what were you calling in for?
I don't know. I was going to see. I don't know if you guys were talking about guns or anything like that. I was just curious.
We are.
Okay.
The question I'm asking essentially is in regards to the way we view Second Amendment rights in this country shall not be infringed upon. So there's going to be zero movement on the Second Amendment. So I guess the question I'm asking is, are mass casualty events just something we're going to have to live with? And do you believe armed teachers, armed personnel in schools would have any significant effect towards limiting this stuff?
So, I mean, we had this incident yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever it was, where I know there was a security officer there and he left the building. He ran out. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but from what I heard, the guy just
that part,
straight up
but
left.
I know the guy was in there. I didn't hear that part. I hate to laugh at it, but that's really bad. I heard CNN just had a ticker on there or a banner that stated that the gunman was inside of the school for an hour before the police finally took his life. So he had plenty of time to operate.
Yeah, and also he was actually outside shooting rounds off in the school parking lot for 12 minutes before actually going inside the building. So I feel like I hate to talk, crap on people who put their lives at risk every day. I don't want to include all police officers, but there was a clear lack of doing anything in this situation from that police officer. And also the police officers that showed up after the scene were preventing parents and people from going into the scene to be able to help anyone out while they just waited there.
Yeah, and for you guys in the comments asking me in regards to a repeat, looks like Queen Lady and Lyle. Yeah, an hour. It said it on CNN. And this came from the police, not from CNN, because I understand this audience, my favorite audience, my MAGA folks don't have a lot of credibility for CNN. That's fine. No, the police stated that it was an hour before they took the life of the guy inside the school. So he was in there for a whole hour. Now, what you're saying is you heard that one of the security guards actually ran out of the school. I haven't heard
That's what
that
I
yet.
heard.
Yeah.
I heard that. I don't want to. I could be unconfirmed, but I heard that there was a security officer in the school who left when the shooting occurred. Because apparently they have a really big budget in Valde School District. They have armed personnel that they keep in the schools constantly. So this guy either left or just didn't show up entirely. Like it sounded like he just left, like on duty, and
Well,
kind of just
from
left
what
those
I'm
kids.
from what I'm seeing in the comments from Don and also someone else there, looks like Kelly Camp, frequent viewers of the program. They're basically saying that from what they heard, the police essentially took cover and waited for a tactical team to arrive, which obviously leaves the children in there at the mercy of the assailant. But they waited until backup, more heavily armed backup could arrive. I mean, you got to think about it. The police they all have sidearms, and this guy can be seen visible with an AR, and he's firing out the window or wherever. I'm just making this up. I don't know what happened, but they see this guy firing with a long rifle from a distance, and yeah, they're like, we got to get somebody here with better weapons. And they just left the kids up to their own devices until that tactical team arrived. That's what it's sounding like. I could be wrong, but that's what it's sounding like.
Yeah, it just sounds like on every level, that police department, that security detail, everything, it just sounds like they failed those kids. And I think that's just sad that these kids were left in that situation. And when the cops actually got into the building, they were before they had even killed the shooter, they asked for kids to call out so they could come find them. They called out to a kid said, "Hey, I'm over here." The shooter, they said, well, they told the kids, they were like, "Hey, if you need help, call out for us so we can figure out where you are." This kid called out, the shooter found that kid and shot him.
Wow.
Like,
it just sounds like...
director
in the comment. Yeah, SS director in the comments, you said, how did the USA become a hating-filled culture? We were started that way. We're trying to get out of that, but that's how the country was founded on that. So hopefully we can correct it somehow, some way, but that's kind of how the country was founded. In regards to, what's going on with this, though, is, in your opinion, or based on what you're seeing, do you think there's any kind of way, while maintaining the Second Amendment, not infringing on it one bit, is there any kind of way we can make it so that we don't have to continue living with this shit? Or is this just the norm of life in America at this point?
I think you're going to have, we as a country are going to have need to have a massive cultural reform where, we kind of change our thinking on the values of life and how we treat people. We have a culture that kind of treats young men as dysfunctional women. We don't really give them the things they need to grow up to be good quality men like that they used to. A lot of these men these young men, they don't have good quality, male figures in their life to really look up to. And a lot of them are very lonely on pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. And I think until you can change that, we can't really change these things.
All right, fair enough. Well, listen, I got a few others want to come on, so I do want to move it along, but
of course,
I think we're in
Have
the
a good
same
night.
ballpark. Enjoy it up there. It's got to be beautiful up there. I would love
It's
to see it, but
beautiful.
I would like to see it when the sun is up.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I'd say come in June or July. It's the best time. But you have a good night.
absolutely, you too. Wow, that was an interesting one. I like to see Alaska, but not when the sun is never coming up. Real quick, William Long. I'm gonna bring William. I'm gonna ask that he hold first. I want to ask you guys a question. Hang on a second, William. I'm gonna ask you guys a question based upon your own personal belief. Which one do you believe is more important to American society? Stopping these children from being injured in these mass casualty events, or preserving the right to own firearms in the Second Amendment? Guns or kids? I hate to make it sound so simple like that, but which one do you believe is more important? Preserving the Second Amendment right and your right to own guns, or stopping these mass casualty events and protecting kids? Which one do you believe is more important? Put it in the comments, guns or kids. Okay, William, what's going on?
Oh, not much. How are you? Hello?
I'm doing good. What's on your mind this evening? Most people are saying kids, but okay, fair enough. Okay, what's on your mind this evening?
Okay, so obviously we need to protect our kids, and the only way we protect our children is through guns. Now, back in the 1980s and prior to that, we had more guns per person than we do now. So guns are not the problem, okay? The problem right now, in my belief, is the discipline portion part of it. There's a couple of different reasons. One, a lot of us aren't following God anymore. Okay, we have drifted away from religion. We have drifted away from discipline. We have drifted away from the nuclear family, as in just being good to people in general. This whole situation of, you know, I'm going to do me, you better respect me, I am me, and it's all about me, me, me. And I believe this is the issue we're having. We have drifted away from love thy neighbor. I'm here to serve you. You are here to serve me. And if we think that way, life will be better.
Well, let me say this in regards to drifting away from religion, because I was very religious when I was younger. If you had found me when I was 7 or 8 years old and asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said a preacher. I'm not very religious at all now. And when you talked about drifting away from religions and schools and things like that, folks speak of. One issue I have is that the further back in American history you go, the more religious this country was. And the further back you go, the more judgmental, the more oppressive. In my opinion, I believe the days where America was at its most religious point was some of the worst days there were. So it's hard for me to, just me personally, I understand a lot of you guys may disagree with this, but for me personally, I'm not a big fan of going back to religion because our history with religion is so awful. I mean, the LGBT community would be banished to hell in a heavily religious country. They would not be allowed to exist. I mean, hell, even interracial marriage and things like that are stuff that people were using religion against. So, and certainly with Roe versus Wade and things like that. So, I personally, the liberal in me, is not a big fan of going back to religion because America's a melting pot. There's a lot of folks from different countries, different places, and let's face it, every single religion teaches you that is the only true religion. And if you got a country where there's a whole bunch of people with a lot of different religious backgrounds, and everybody believes that their religion is the right one and everybody else's is fake or fraud, it's obvious that that's going to lead to a problem. I think that the only time religion would work is in a country where everybody follows the same religion. But go ahead.
See, and I disagree on that because as a Christian, I, in my religion, I respect everybody. I accept everybody. And if you don't believe what I believe in, it's okay. And I don't hate you for it. I would hope that you would come to my church and see what I see and love everybody that I do because I love everybody. Everybody's accepted. And if we just and back to the love thy neighbor, if we were to just love our neighbors for who they are and love everybody in our country, we wouldn't have this. And I'm not saying that religion is the major driving factor in these school shootings.
Okay.
The number
All
one
right.
is discipline. You
Okay.
cannot discipline your child anymore. I've seen children run households as the parents. What can I do? My kid is acting up, but what can I do? Like they're soft. Parents nowadays are freaking soft. And I believe that's the problem. See, my kids, and I have 5 of them, all of them, when I ask them to do something, it's yes, sir. And with my wife, it's yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Okay, flat out. And it's not like I run a military ship around here because we do joke around. We have a good time. We laugh. But when it comes to the serious time, listen, I need you to do this for me right now. Yes, sir. and they
Well,
do
let
it.
me ask you this question though, in regards to what you're suggesting from your aspect. Somebody put in the comments in regards to mass casualty events. This seems to be a uniquely American problem. Does the problems you're mentioning with kids, discipline, religions, I think, does those problems not exist in other countries? Because nobody else seems to have this problem we're talking about.
And I'm not educated enough to know about the other countries, about how
Okay.
their children, react or talk to them. But I also do know that other countries are really strong in religion, and they are not America with the melting pot with so many different cultures that are in that country. Usually, like you go to Venezuela, you go to, just all across the world, the majority of those people, they do believe in one religion. When you
I
come
will
to
say this though.
America,
Right. I will say this in regards to, because we tout how free we are in this country. We're always talking about freedom. When you think about countries on earth that have a lot of freedom, that have a lot of personal freedom, most of those countries are not very religious. The Denmarks, Sweden, Switzerland, and places where you have a lot of freedom tends to not have a lot of religion. The heavily religious countries are places like those in the Middle East. They're very religious in the Middle East, and freedom is virtually non-existent over there. But yeah, most of the countries that are very free do not have a lot of religion in them.
see, and I believe that our country doesn't have a lot of religion in us either. We have definitely drifted away from religion. Yes,
And
we do
we've
have
become more
churches,
right, and we've become more free as we've done that.
but we've also had more mass shootings since we've done that.
That came with freedom, and that's what I asked. That's one of the, and that's
So
the
is it
premier
freedom?
question. And that's the premier question I ask, is that as long as people are free to have firearms, and that right will be shall not be infringed upon, as a condition of that freedom, are we to just accept that we're going to be living with mass casualty events? That's part of the freedom.
And see, I definitely don't want to say that we need to settle with the mass casualties, and I believe there are definitely steps that we can take to prevent that. This guy walked through an open door. It was unlocked. It was open.
Yeah, yeah.
I, I don't know how else to say it, but I mean, these schools, you protect not you, but our country protects pieces of paper that have presidents on them stronger than we protect physical children. You rather protect $100 bill more aggressively than we do our children. What is wrong with our
Yeah.
country? Like, there is something wrong with that.
Well, America is a capitalist country, so I will just tell you straight out: when you're in when capitalism is king, money is going to be more important than anything else. Your freedom, your health, your children. Period. Money in this country ranks supreme. I'll give you the last one. I got somebody else. I do want to move it on, but yeah, I don't think that anything in this country is more important than money. But go ahead.
Okay, so they protect politicians a million times stronger than they protect our children. They
Because they make
protect
more money off of it. They make more money protecting politicians than your children.
uh, see, and that's the problem that I have. And see, and I don't think the politicians want this problem to go away. I think some of them enjoy the mass shootings because then they can push an agenda to keep themselves in power.
I would
I'm
hope that
all
that
I'm anti-gun. I'm fighting for your children. Look at these mass shootings. You should vote for me. I'm going to protect your children when you do nothing to protect our children.
all right, fair enough. All
I
right, well, let
agree
me
with you.
move
It's
it
all
on.
about money. I would
Yeah,
have to side with you on that.
absolutely. Hey, come on back through anytime, man. For you guys who are watching, like I say, always feel free to follow the broadcast. It helps your boy out. You guys almost might get me to 30,000 likes if you really want to show me some love. I can't believe you got me to 27. Feel free to get the boy up to 30. Real quick, like I said earlier, if you go to YouTube, type in the Handsome Liberal. You don't even have to subscribe. I'd be happy if you did, but you don't even. If you just simply go to YouTube, type in the Handsome Liberal, you can see all of these programs rebroadcast in their entirety. So
if you wanted to know what the hell was going on, et cetera, et cetera. There's no way I'm gonna be able to pronounce this one. Vashta.
That name is. Hello from Harlem. I don't think I've ever been there, but appreciate that. You're welcome, William Long. Appreciate your time as well. Vashton, am I pronouncing that correct?
Yeah, it's close enough. It's like, I
Okay.
don't know if you're aware of a YouTube debater named, I think it's Vosh or Vaush.
No.
He's, yeah, I used to be a big fan of his. I've kind of gone off him, but anyway, that's I'm kind of
Okay.
stuck with the name now. Anyway, yeah, so obviously I'm in Australia, and I was listening to this on and off while working. It just popped up on my feed. And I think you've touched on it a few times, like with the last caller, if we can call him that. He was quite amusing, blaming it on religion, which is pretty weak, to be honest.
Where are you at in Australia? Where are you at in Australia?
Well, right now I'm in Canberra, but I'm based in Sydney. I drive trucks, so I'm not exactly a scholar, but I do follow this issue. And I think it comes down to what Ted Cruz was asked, was that this morning, that he ran away from? You know, what's the difference? And you asked it yourself between America and everywhere else.
Yeah.
What's the fundamental difference as to why you're having, you know, mass killings? I think it was 200 this year so far, and it's only May, 221.
Oh, yeah.
And
over
we've had
200.
zero. Yeah.
Now, I will say, I used to live in Australia. You mentioned Canberra. Now, you mentioned Sydney. New South Wales, I used to have a clothing store. I used to have a little clothing shop in Campbelltown, New South Wales. I lived in Mount Annan as well. So, yeah, and I lived in Brisbane. So I'm quite familiar with the country. I lived over there for a number of years. But now,
how long ago were you in Mount? Yeah.
Huh?
I was just wondering how long ago you were in Mount Annan, because my kid lives there now, and it's changed a lot in the last few years. They've really put in some big shopping centers. And,
Yeah, 2010, I left from over there. But if I'm correct,
you probably wouldn't recognize it.
No, I'm sure I wouldn't. If I'm correct, the guns were taken in Australia in '96, right? After that mass
Yes, that's
shooting?
right. Yeah, 6 weeks after John Howard was elected, that's when the shooting happened. And I think only a matter of weeks after that, he had the legislation put in place.
Yeah,
So
he
it
was
the
the
one
prime
good thing he
minister.
did.
Yeah, he was the prime minister when I was there, and he was. And by the way, folks, John Howard, that prime minister, was a conservative in that country, and he had a lot of pro-gun folks that from his own party that he had to override to take the gun. Now, since the guns have been removed over there, what do you believe in regards to the sentiment is from the citizens? Are there more citizens that want guns back, or are there more citizens that are happy guns were taken away?
Any politician that ever pushes to relax gun laws gets shouted down pretty quick. It's something like 80 to 90% in favor of keeping the laws in place. And the one demonstrative, clear thing that keeps us doing that is what's happening in America. All we need to do is point to Texas, what happened in Brooklyn, what happened in Buffalo, and just go, we don't want that. That's literally any reasonable person using common sense, morality, ethics, even though that gets a bit subjective, you're still going to want to keep, high-powered rifles. They might not be automatic, they might be semi-automatic, but, the effect of one of those bullets from an AR-15, it's like a sledgehammer on a watermelon. So, there's a reason they needed DNA.
It's interesting you would say that, because I talk to people on this program every single day that talks about how much better we are and how all the other countries are following us. And here I have an Australian that's literally suggesting that you guys point to us as what not to become. Because everybody says, America's leading, America's this, and you're like, they're using us as what not to become.
No, unfortunately, most of the rest of the world sees America as a fallen state and mostly a third world country.
Well, we're not third world. We're not third world. But I used to have these debates in bars. Parramatta in your state, another town, Parramatta, I'm sure you're familiar with. I used to go there, and I used to do crowd control and stuff over there. And I did have a lot of Australians saying some of the stuff you're talking about, Al. We think we're the biggest and baddest, and we'll point out some of the flaws. But we're certainly not a third world state. Third world.
No, I'm not saying that myself. I'm just saying that's the way a lot of people think. I think that America has a lot to inspire us. Sorry, my grammar's falling apart, but basically, I think there is good things about America. Most of our culture still comes from there. Most of the TV and music and film we watch all comes from there. And so the ideals that it holds up and the First Amendment rights that it still, to a large degree, upholds, I think, is really what holds, I think, a lot of people together.
Okay,
Like, hey, that's, you know,
let
it's
me ask.
inspiring.
Okay, let me present this to you because this is something that would resonate to all of my viewers here. Who most of us believe, at least on the right in particular, the ones who support the Second Amendment believe that if you take guns away in America, you're going to have a tyrannical government like Hitler or Stalin. You're going to have criminals rising up, and if you take guns away, only criminals will have guns. What happened in your country when they took guns away?
There was no more mass shootings. That was it. I keep hearing this trope about like, oh, our crime went right up. No, that's absolutely false. I've not seen any like actually legitimate statistics saying that crime shot up. Obviously, we have bikie gangs and a small degree of organised crime. If you want to look it up, there's like you lived in Sydney, southwest Sydney. Not far from there, there's Bankstown, Punch Bowl. There's like Middle Eastern organised crime. So, you know, if someone wants to get knocked off, they can find a way to do it. But you're not getting some 18-year-old that works, what is he, a fry cook? This kid in Texas? He worked in some kind of fast food joint. And on his 18th birthday, walked out and bought 2 AR-15s. And because he was pissed off at the world, decided to shoot a bunch of kids. That is never, ever going to happen here. So I'm not talking about taking away everyone's guns and no pistols and no, you know, concealed carry, none of that. I just think that any step in the right direction would be amazing, but that's just not happening because you've got the Republicans. I don't know if you saw Steve Kerr's speech at the NBA press conference.
Yeah, I saw that.
Just that, the 50 Republicans that are holding up some basic common sense, like, hey, let's maybe have a registry or whatever they're pushing for, some red flag laws, you know, something like that would be a start. No one's going to take away all your guns in the next.
So based on and it's interesting talking to you because you've lived through what we're saying could never happen here. Have there been citizens in your country that threatened, if you take away guns, we're going to fight back with the police or start a civil war? How easy was it to get weapons from the citizens once they banned guns?
I mean, I was in high school in 1996, so that's showing my age a bit. I don't remember any big outcry. Obviously we didn't have the online sphere that we do now where people could there wasn't a loud minority jumping up and down. It was basically what you saw in the papers. There was kind of some protests from farmers that were worried about losing their shotguns or whatever, but I don't think there was a big, the Prime Minister himself made the big mistake of wearing a bulletproof jacket to a rally. And he said one thing that he regrets about the whole thing, because it obviously was, optically made him look like he didn't trust them. But after the rally, after his speech, he walked down and talked to them all, mixed with the crowd. So, and then no one did anything to him and he was safe enough. And nothing happened after that in terms of domestic insurrections or anything like that. No one stormed the Capitol, if that's what you're worried about.
Okay, so I wasn't going there, but you obviously pay close attention to the United States. What about this notion? In America, we believe that if you take away guns, the amount of knifings and bombings and other methods to kill will skyrocket. Did you see any increase in alternative methods of committing homicide or assault?
I mean, to be fair, there wasn't a lot of gun violence already. That was a pretty bizarre and one-off event. So it's not like there was a big change from so there was all this gun violence and suddenly there wasn't. But yeah, so I didn't think, and it's really weird when people do that. Look, in China, there was some school, or it was a market where a bunch of guys ran around stabbing people. I think there was 29 deaths there. Kunming it was. But that, it's a weird apples and oranges, false equivalence, because, there you had 5 or 6 guys running around. The police there don't have weapons. It was pretty amazing they even stopped them at only 29 people when you've got literally no way to, these guys are long. They were basically machetes. And, so it's a strange thing to start bringing up. I know there's a lot of knife crime in the UK, but the results of that are a lot less traumatic than the results of gun crime.
Absolutely. Assailants choose guns because they're they are more effective at killing. I gotta move it on, but I got one other question I want to ask you on an unrelated topic. COVID. A lot of my American right wingers, the first thing you talk about when we talk about freedom is the way you guys handled COVID. They're suggesting you had concentration camps and all kinds of crazy stuff in regards to
hilarious.
COVID. What happened with COVID?
Well, the problem is we had a conservative government and he didn't think it was a race and he wanted to pander to his base that was fairly right-wing. So, it did take us a long time to start reacting. And I think what saved us was being an island country. So there is something to that. But eventually we kind of followed the advice of the experts and that's what helped. We shut down the borders. We got the vaccines out pretty quick eventually. We weren't the first. America was weirdly the first, but they went really slow with it. There was like the receptiveness to getting a vaccine. Like the initial people grabbed it, and then there was a whole lot of resistance.
Was there a lot of resistance to being vaccinated in your country?
Not really. Like it was at 90% pretty quickly, within a few months, 90% vaccinated, and then we got to open up again. Whereas in America, I think it jumped up to 50% pretty quick, and then it just kind of plateaued. And you couldn't get all those anti-vax idiots. We've got a couple, don't get me wrong. We had a few, but nowhere near to the degree that you had in America. Yeah. And there was no camps. There was no people getting jumped on or shot for not wearing a mask. It's just hilarious. Some of these stories I've seen, but yeah.
Well,
we're all going to the beach.
I'm hearing from the right wing that you guys had COVID concentration camps.
No, I don't know. I think there was an image that was sent around. It's a bit like what happens with that image of the shooter in Texas where it went viral where he looked like a trans kid.
Yes.
And that was a picture of someone else. It's a bit like that. Yeah. As soon as enough people share it, then it becomes true just because, enough people have put it up on their Facebook.
So your whole country was not locked down for 2 years and all of that?
No. It was maybe the first wave, I think we were down for 6 months, then we were kind of opening up, and then the second wave hit, and we were locked down again. But you could still go to the shops, you could still go to the local park. I think the worst case we had, the worst part of it, we had a 5 kilometre, which is something like a 3 mile zone where we could go and go to the park or whatever. But if you could work from home, it was encouraged to do so. But from what I've seen and heard from other countries, it feels fairly similar to the UK and New York and.
Okay. One last question. Yeah, I got one more because I'm getting folks asking me things to ask you. It's pretty interesting to have guests like yourself on. What are you paying per liter for petrol? When I last was there, it was $1.50 per liter. How much is your petrol?
You're going to have to do the maths. It's hard to convert.
For a gallon of gas, a gallon is about 3 point something liters, but you guys sell fuel by the liter. So you're paying how much per liter now?
All right, it's hovering around $2 a litre at the moment, so I don't know how you can convert that. And I buy diesel, which is about the same amount, $2.05. Okay. The premium stuff, like the high octane stuff, you might pay $2.20, and that's pretty much across the country, fairly similar.
So it was the same way when I was there. Fuel over there has always been more than it is over here, simply because
they've got an excise tax.
Yeah, it's always been. When I left there, it was I think the highest I saw it was $1.60 per liter. So
that sounds right.
Yeah, it's always been higher over there. It's just like in Europe, you're going to pay. Americans complain about fuel prices. I often tell you need to go. If you believe America pays a lot for fuel, you need to travel because in Europe they pay a lot. There's a reason why the cars are smaller. In most of you don't see big navigators on the street in Australia or in Europe.
Well, you were here in 2010?
Yeah.
Since then, we've started importing Silverados, GMC Yukon Denali's, Dodge Rams.
Oh,
yeah, so if you're driving down the street, 90% of the traffic is large SUVs. And every other car now is like a Dodge Ram or something like that, yeah. So since Holden, our local manufacturer, closed down, we've just imported American cars. We can't get enough of them.
Oh, Holden is closed. Okay, all right, yeah, it's changed a little bit, too. Yeah, because they didn't. I've always had big Expeditions navigators. Currently I have an Expedition right now, And when I went,
Yeah.
I had a Navigator, and when I moved over there, I wanted something similar, and there was nothing available. I think I ended up with a Honda CRV or something like that. A
CRV,
little,
yeah. The
yeah, and
20,
it was
yeah.
like that was the biggest thing that I could really get my hands on back then. It just wasn't
Wow.
any like
Oh,
yeah, in America they
you
got
could have
big
got a
cars
Land
everywhere.
Cruiser still. You could have got a
Yeah, they had,
Toyota Land Cruiser or something.
yeah, and that was too expensive for me. That's another thing
Yeah,
too. Your
they're like
car,
100 grand.
yeah, they cost a lot more over there. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, come on back through, man. Come on back through sometimes. I enjoy hearing your perspective, and you made me
All
miss
right. Yeah.
my
I
former
still,
homeland. So
no worries. I still want to be able to, I don't know how to turn on my camera. So I'd love to learn how to
if
do
you
that. This is like my second live.
look down at the bottom left-hand corner where it says multi something, if you push on that down there, it'll give you the option of turning your camera on. In the bottom
If
left-hand
I,
corner of the, yeah, there you go. All right, there you go.
all
Handsome
right, cool.
gentleman.
Now I know.
Okay.
Thank you very much. All right,
All
on that
right,
note, I'll
come,
let you go. All
all
right,
right,
peace.
sounds good. Come on back
All right,
anytime. Okay. All right.
will do.
Now that hey,
The guests tonight have been really good. These have been some really interesting. First, we had three different individuals, all serving their country in different ways: a pistol instructor, a long-term officer, and someone who had served multiple tours. And now we got and then we had an Alaskan in there as well. Do I not bring you guys good content or what? Okay, real quick, I'm gonna go to Miss Goddess. I'm gonna have to wrap it up soon, but
take a couple more guys in there.
Yes, you
Good day,
do.
Ancestor. Good
Hey,
day to you too, man.
I'm telling.
Miss Goddess, what's up?
Yeah, I'm gonna start off with this. That guy just put a big Kool-Aid smile on my face.
Give me an elaboration. What did he do to make you so happy, man?
Okay, I just like the fact in 1996 how they took guns away.
I didn't, you know something? I didn't even get around to asking him about New Zealand. New Zealand had a mass casualty event a few years ago, and they just did it also. I believe 3 or 4 years ago, New Zealand just did the same thing right now. Now, New Zealand to Australia is just like Canada is to the United States. They're
Okay,
sister
border.
cities. You can, yeah. So New Zealand also has done that. But go ahead.
Okay, I like that. And just like he pretty much, let us know like, how they live in Australia. And like a lot of things that was said about COVID, he clarified, he gave clarity.
Yeah.
Like it just
Well, if
seemed
you and I will say for an audience like mine that tends to lean right, I saw comments coming in. He's a liar. The
me
guy is on
too.
the ground in his own damn country,
Right,
and they're disputing him. Folks who have never been to Australia,
right,
never have any intentions of going, telling the man is actually there that he's lying.
right.
Sometimes, no matter what you said, if a person wants to believe something, there's nothing you can tell them otherwise. But the man is
Exactly.
on the ground in the country, and they're like he's lying
Exactly.
about how his own country behaves. Go ahead, Ms. Scott.
And I mean, like he was very honest with his opinions. And, America is starting to just, we're just falling apart. Around the world is like looking at us. Just if you heard what that man was saying, like we're looking like really bad right now. Like real bad.
I don't think most Americans care how they look in the eyes of Australians, though. I'm just going to be honest. I don't
Well,
think they even care
that's
about that.
probably true, but I'm just saying around the world in general.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
because like,
crazy thing is, a lot of folks claim that either under Trump or either under President Biden, that America's a laughingstock. My guess is, because I certainly lived there before, we've been a laughingstock regardless of either president. The Second Amendment, the way we treat healthcare in particular, and I believe the penal system, we've been a laughingstock on those three incidents for a long, long time.
yeah, because healthcare is pretty poor. I mean, like even like Canada, they have like universal healthcare, and I think the lady was it your live? The lady was on here, and she was talking about she had like some type of illness, and like she didn't have to worry about anything, no out of pocket. She didn't have nothing to pay. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
I
another.
remember that. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
And well, let me interrupt you. William Long at 66969. That's the good question. So why does everyone want to be us? Um, my response to you is everybody does not want to be us. There are parts of America that we lead the world in, and other folks like our quality of life in terms of wealth and acquisitions. Most places want to be that way. However, our healthcare, most countries are not patterning themselves after our healthcare. Our Second Amendment rights, most free world countries are not looking at us and saying, "I want to be like that." And the same thing I mentioned with the penal system and the way our criminal justice system is operated. Most countries do not look at America and say, wow, their criminal justice system is great. We want to be just like that. So there are parts of the American culture, I agree with you, that folks want to emulate, but not all of it. Go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Okay. With all these, where we at right now, over 200 and something deaths because of guns, and like overall, how do you feel about the situation as far as, I'm going to say, gun control? Like, what do you think? Are we going to just become desensitized, like just used to this?
Yes, that is my answer. I believe America is a right-leaning country. We are center right. I mean, whether you're talking about the Second Amendment, obviously Roe versus Wade is being rolled back. We just encountered, now we have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. America leans right. And I do believe that mass casualty events are here to stay. So eventually we will become more and more desensitized by it. Somebody mentioned on my lunchtime broadcast already now that, well, in a month we'll stop talking about this. And I told them, I said, yeah, because a new event will probably have happened for us to stop talking about this one. So in regards to the question whether we will become desensitized, yeah, we are going to become desensitized by it. It's going to, just like if you watch the news and you hear a guy got shot down the street in your town, the next day you kind of forgot that was on the news last night. In most American cities, you kind of forgot about it. You already are desensitized to it on a little level. It's just a matter of getting used to it on a bigger level. And I think that these mass casualty events at educational institutions and public places, libraries and freaking movie theaters, you will become desensitized to it. I do believe that's what we're going to have.
So my other question, do you feel as if America is starting to look broken?
Not, I mean, when I look at it, even though we're having these horrible events, when I look at the history of America, I still see an uptick. I mean, the fact that you and I can have a conversation and we got folks from all different cultures in here that are respecting us and having, you didn't used to be able to do that. I think that regardless of how bad things may be today, I say this all the time when folks say, and that's one of the things I talk about when folks say talking about making America great. I always say that there is not a single point in U.S. history that I would want to go back to thinking that is better than it is now. Despite how you feel about right now, for me, this is the best time in American history. There's not a single period or era in our history that I would want to go back to. So, I think we're going to have to get desensitized to violence, but is America broken? Has it ever been repaired? I mean, it's always been broken, hasn't it? I mean, we were founded on brokenness.
Okay, what I'm saying, okay, when I say America is broken, it's because the guns, the crime, it's just out of control. And I mean, and even you admit, it's just only going to just get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And you also mentioned,
Go ahead.
Poor medical. Like, it's just not getting any better. I mean, just like the guy from Australia, I mean, like, he can tell what's going on because, the news is telling everything. He could tell exactly to us. I mean, he knows what's going on in this country.
Well, and that a lot, and I used to say that.
But we don't know what's going on in their country.
Right.
I don't know what's going on.
I used to use that as when an Australian would say something to me or try to say America was ignorant or something. I used to use that all the time. I used to tell them, it's just like the CEO at your company. You could be in the elevator with your CEO and you would know exactly who the boss of your company is, but he wouldn't know you from anybody because at the end of the day, you have to listen to him, not the other way around. And Australians used to hate that, but I used to tell them, we don't need to know what's going on in your country, so to speak, because we know you're doing what we tell you to. That was arrogant. And now I realize that when I see how bad things are going. But I used to tell them that all the time. We don't need to know what you guys are doing. You're doing what we tell you to do. But now that I see how many flaws we're making and how bad this country is looking on the world stage after having traveled around, I realized that was a bad thing to say. But and it used to piss off Australians too, because at the end of the day, they had to admit it. I'm like, how the hell are you going to tell me you're not following me when there's a Big Mac down the street, you're drinking on a Coca-Cola, and you're watching Law and Order in Australia? And they used to hate when I would say that. But at the end of the day, it is true. But we might be leading them down a bad path. Fortunately for them, they have not adopted some of the worst aspects of America, like hardcore religion and gun, and guns everywhere and things like that. But they are starting to adopt a lot of our ways.
Yeah. I mean, America is great. America is great. So,
Right.
I mean, but if it continues to go into the direction where it's going, I feel as though it's a great possibility it's going to just continue to fall apart.
Well, what about
Because
the notion? What about the notion if we were to limit guns, there could be a full-blown civil war?
hey, no, we can't stop what's going to happen. If it's going to happen, just either you're going to have to be prepared for it. We can't stop it. We can't. We can't stop it. And as far as them taking away the guns, that's not going to never happen because the NRA. I just felt like the NRA and I'm gonna say the Republicans, like it goes hand on hand. It's money. It's just money. It's like a money maker. It's no reason why it should be that many guns, over 400 million guns, and continue to be more and more and more. And just like in the state of Texas, it was 21, but the governor dropped it to 18 years old, young years old, and look what happened.
Yeah.
That right there is saying that it has to be better. Everything has to get better. It's just getting worse.
Well, what about Living Life's comment? And I'm gonna move it on in a minute. But he said, "Why does it have to be the gun's fault?" In other words, guns don't kill people. Why are we blaming the guns?
Exactly. Because it's out of control. I do understand that a lot of people own guns and they don't go around and shoot up different places. It's not the guns, it's the hands of the people that have guns that's very irresponsible, that's giving it a bad name.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, well, I got to move it on. I definitely got to move it on as usual. So appreciate you coming
Do
through.
I have anything I want to end? You always ask me that.
I'm asking you now. Go ahead, roll it out. Roll it out.
Okay, I'm just going to end on this. Okay, let's think about this. The children is our future, but if the children is not living to be our future, what would our future be like?
It's a good question.
Good
question.
Bye-bye.
All right. Catch you on the flip side.
You know it.
Always a
Miss Goddess. Always a pleasure talking to Miss Goddess. Listen, folks, I am going to have to wrap it up pretty quick. Let me read a few more comments before I go ahead and do that. Katie Porter in 2024. I don't think so. Trump 2024, best president ever. Biden and Harris are destroying the United States. You know, it's interesting you asked that because I asked somebody earlier on their live if they thought it was a Trump supporter, which by far is who I prefer talking to. But we were talking about the vaccine and things like that. He had choice words. And I asked him, do you think that was toxic in terms of getting the jab? And he said, yeah. Had a Trump hat on and everything. And I asked him, I said, if you think that was toxic, the jab, of course, I'm trying not to trigger the censors, but if you think that stuff is toxic and harmful to human beings, why would you suggest that Trump is the best president ever when he's going around promoting it? And I made it clear, I think Trump, in terms of the economy, ran the country pretty damn well, certainly better than Biden. But for you folks who believe that stuff is toxic, Why would you want a commander in chief back in office that's promoting everybody to take it? Now, he's not trying to force you to take it. He's saying it's optional. But if you think it's toxic, why would you want a commander in chief suggesting that you ingest something that is toxic? He didn't have a legitimate answer for that at all. Didn't have any good answer for that. I mean, at the end of the day, whether it's Biden or Trump, like, okay, for instance, user 78, you said because he doesn't force it. If it is toxic, why are you advising me to take it? You don't need to force me to take poison. Why are you even advising me to take it? If you truly care about the country, why are you advising me to take something that's toxic? Does that make any sense to anybody in here? If you really believe that's toxic, you want to re-elect the person that's telling you to take a toxin. And because they're not forcing you to take it, you're cool with that. You realize how many millions of people have already ingested this? So I don't understand, and I'm not here to defend Biden. So for you guys who are countering with Biden, that's a whole different ball game. But I'm just simply saying, and I see your comment, Disturb 107 says keep reaching. I'm not reaching because I think Trump was a better president, excluding the tweets and the bullshit. He was a better president than Biden. So I'm not reaching at all. I've been jabbed in all of that shit. I'm just simply painting a picture of something that should be something what the hell's going on with my monitor? Something that your reasonable ears should be able to hear. If you believe this guy was great and you believe this stuff is toxic, how can those two things work together? It doesn't make any sense to me. At the very least, you'd have to say when it comes to this stuff, he is incredibly incompetent on it. The fact, well, yeah, it's bad for you, but he's not forcing you to take it. Yeah, why advise you to take it? Why tell you it works? I mean, he's going around just like Biden and saying the stuff works. You're not holding him accountable at all for this. That doesn't make any sense to me. I never could understand that. Because he has people lying to him, says William. Okay, that might be a more fair point, but at the end of the day, you as the commander-in-chief need to be competent enough to be able to determine who's lying to you and fix that. You as the commander-in-chief, your entire voting body, most of your constituents, the ones who support you, realize you're being lied to and you don't? That doesn't look very competent. And I'm not saying Trump, if this was Biden, I would say the same shit. But if Biden is promoting something and saying something is good for me, and all of the liberals, including myself, are saying, no, it ain't, then that makes Biden look incompetent, right? How could you know he's being lied to and he doesn't know at the level he is in the political sphere? How could this not make any sense to you guys? I understand I understand this guy was far better for the country. I understand economically, and in a lot of his policies are better than what we're dealing with now. I get that. But that doesn't mean you give him a pass on something that doesn't make sense. And I hate that from this aspect, that even though you can like somebody, sometimes you guys feel that he is above criticism. This should make sense no matter how much you like the guy. If the guy is great, why is he telling us to take toxins? How is it that me as a normal citizen knows this is toxic and he at that level does not? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense to me that you working as a janitor or working as an engineer or working as a bus driver knows that something is toxic and you're telling me the commander-in-chief doesn't? What research did you do that's unavailable to him? Can somebody explain that? I don't understand that. And I do agree with everybody who's saying it's still your choice. That is fine. Mike, New York, you're right. No, he is not trying to force you to do this. That's fine. But if it is toxic, the fact that he's not forcing you, but only advising you to ingest toxins should be something you should hold him accountable for. Yeah, it's dangerous, but he didn't make you do it. He just told you should do something that could hurt you. And you're giving them a pass on that. How many people that may listen that he could ultimately harm if it is toxic? Now, clearly as a liberal, I don't believe that. I've been jabbed and all of that shit. But from your side, if you believe it's harmful, why would you want someone back in that's promoting something that's harmful? I don't understand it. That's all I'm going to say. I do not understand it. If he would say, what does that say? If he would say anything, if the leftist news would run it nonstop till November. Yeah, you're right. If he says something, you're right. The liberal, same thing they do with Biden. How many times have you seen Biden fall up the 747 steps? I've made it clear I don't know how a president could fall up some aircraft steps, but how many times have you seen that on right-wing media? Yeah, they're going to make fun of him. I get that. But if you really believe the shit is toxic, why wouldn't you hold him accountable? Why, as a citizen, you know it's toxic, and as a commander-in-chief, he doesn't. He has information, far more information than any of us could ever dream of. How do you know that and he don't? Can anybody explain it to me? How do you know that and he does not? I will tell you why. Hey, William, I would love to put you back on, William, but I'm in overtime right now because I've had such great guests, and I've already had you on as well tonight. I will have you on tomorrow at 7, but I got to get ready to retire for the night just like everybody else. Blue Wave is coming to protect women's rights, New York Living. I don't personally believe that is the case. We'll see what happens when the Supreme Court comes down with their ruling and actually does overturn Roe versus Wade. It could happen, but I still am in the camp that you're probably going to have more of a red wave. Okay, folks, this has been a really good one. 32,000 fucking likes or something, some crazy shit like that. I guess I don't even know what else to say, but thank you to all you folks who have tuned in and been riding out with your boy. Had some really awesome guests on. For any of you who are still watching that were among that group, thank you for your service. All of you guys been through some serious shit. The country is better off with you than without you. Once again, it's your boy Tim, the Handsome Liberal. Feel free to follow the program. As I said, if you go to YouTube, type in the Handsome Liberal. All of the programs are there. This one will be there tomorrow. If you want to show your boy some love, give me a subscribe on there tomorrow. Catch you later.